What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 11ts Chapter 201 Evolution. Advertisement. The moment they saw Aizen disappear, everyone was stunned. Whether it's Soul Society or Arrancar, even Uziwariel and Stark, who were on the edge of Karakura town, stopped their fight. Aizen's Ryotsu completely disappeared. Yunohana Retsu squinted her eyes slightly, smiled at the corners of her mouth, and said, "It looks like we won." Hearing that, Stark's face showed a clear look of astonishment, and some couldn't accept this fact. He is not a particularly loyal subordinate, but he is very aware of Aizen's strength. Before merging with Hogyoku, Aizen was able to sweep Hueco Mundo. After this merged with Bengqian, his strength reached a level that he could not imagine. However, now Aizen's Ryotsu has completely disappeared. This is undoubtedly a huge psychological shock for Stark. He looked in front of him with great dread. Shinigami, a woman with loose black hair, clenched the musket in his hand again. The wanton murderous agitation and the weird kendo attacks that agitated all around made Stark put all his mind on the battle. If it weren't for Yunohana Retsu's reminder, perhaps he would not have noticed Aizen's Ryotsu disappearing. Please don't continue to be distracted in the battle. Eggflower Relief raised Zanpakutō in his hand, and leaned in front of him, with a cold-tested killing intent in his gentle voice. "It bothers me very much, please respect the battle?" Stark bowed his head to apologize and said, "Sorry, Aizen-sama Ryotsu's disappearance made me a little distracted." Compared to his subordinate officers, Stark's character is completely opposite to him. "Of course, it's only confined to appearance. Next, I will do my best." Stark raised the musket in his hand and whispered. "Unlimited reloading of Sero. Aizen, is it really dead?" Omeda Marichio's tone was full of suspicion. From this point of view, he should have completely died. The feeling of chasing after different words disappeared. Advertisement. Broken B lowered his eyes, suppressing the emotions in his heart, trying to make himself look more plain. "No, the war is not over yet." Yamamoto Motoyanagi Sai Shigekuni, who was scorched all over, closed his eyes slightly, trying to adjust his state. "On that Hogyoku, there is still Ryotsu gathering." Hearing that, Shinigami's faces appeared in sorrow. This time even Lingza is not even left, but Aizen is still alive? This survivability is too ridiculous, right? Urahara Kazuki said. Although the captain was seriously injured, his perception is still as sharp as ever. Hearing this, Yamamoto Genryuze gave him a deep look and said in a deep voice. "If you want this war to end sooner, then help the old man heal. War, never alone can decide the outcome." He thought that Urahara Kazuki would listen to his own opinions and use those weird inventions to help him relieve the injuries caused by the hot hell. However, Urahara Kazuki shook his head and said with an ordinary face. "Sorry, Captain. I don't agree with you. The strength of Shimo-kun has already surpassed Shinigami. When you reach the peak 9 times, you can directly influence the direction of the war." Speaking of this, a trace of apology appeared on Urahara Kazuki's face. "What's more, I can't relieve much of the injury caused by Ryujin Jaka. There was no preparation for this in advance." Upon hearing this, Yamamoto Genryusai will not continue to inquire about this matter. He can't force Urahara Kazuki to help him heal his injuries. However, in the current state, it is impossible to join such an intense battle. In this way, it seemed that all hopes could only be pinned on Shimo. Yamamoto squinted his eyes slightly and looked at Shimo, who was walking in the sky with a deep gaze. Shimo carefully looked at Hogyoku in front of him, and finally realized one thing. Under the conventional combat plan, the soul of Aizen, who had merged with Hogyoku, could no longer be destroyed. Even if the soul is destroyed in an instant, there is no way to completely destroy it. Advertisement. It looks like it's time to adopt a special combat plan. Seeking flowers. The moment this thought just appeared, the surrounding area of Hogyoku burst into lavender light again, like stars in the sky. Boom! The sky in Karakura town was rendered lavender. Immediately afterwards, a figure gradually emerged in the light of lavender, centered on Hogyoku. At the moment when they saw this figure, the faces of everyone inevitably appeared astonished, and they gradually became ugly. The breath of Ryotsu is exactly Aizen Moyasuke. The jet black slash did not seem to completely slay it. The direction of the war is once again difficult to predict. Afterwards, the lavender light gradually dissipated, and a figure suspended in the dry air in a half-kneeling posture. He stands slowly upright, with huge white butterfly wings spread out behind his back. Aizen at this time has completely changed his appearance. On his forehead, a gap similar to that of the eyes appeared, and the eyebrows disappeared completely, but it did not give a sense of abruptness. In addition to the 3 pairs of huge white butterfly wings on the back, holes inlaid with Hogyoku appeared on the chest. "Shimo-kun, it's a pity. Your attack did not completely kill me, but promoted my evolution. Strong desire is inevitable in the course of evolution." Aizen's eyes dropped slightly, and he said calmly, "Your strength gave birth to my desire for transcendence." After Hogyoku sensed this, he spontaneously began to explore higher levels. Having said that, he raised his eyes to meet Shimo's gaze. Shimo noticed that Aizen's gaze seemed to have abandoned all the so-called emotions, like an iceberg. He raised his right hand. Kyōraku Shimo, who had fallen into the ruins because his body had disappeared, suddenly flew into his hand. At the moment when Hando and Zanpakutō were handed over, the light of lavender gleamed again. Kyōraku Shimo gradually disappeared from his palm, as if merging with Aizen himself. Aizen was aware of her own state. A smile suddenly appeared on her face, and said, "Thank you, Shimo-kun. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to do this completely." The boundary between Shinigami and the virtual. 0. Chapter 202 Different Shikai, Different World, Advertisement. Hearing Aizen's words, Shimo didn't seem to be too concerned. His eyes moved slightly, staring at Aizen's proud gaze. "Evolution doesn't seem to change your arrogant character, Aizen." Shimo said lightly, "Remember what I said before?" Hearing that, Aizen thought for a moment, then smiled. "Will conceit eventually lead to wide pages? No, I am not arrogant, but self-confident." Shimo laughed blankly. The latter sentence was what he said. After being defeated once, Aizen seemed to be very concerned about everything he did. Under the seemingly arrogant appearance, there is still a cautious heart hidden. However, the Ryatsu shown by Aizen really proves that he has reached a level beyond Shinigami and virtual. It seems that the so-called Hogyoku's introduction to 893 leads to evolution, which is quite effective. When he officially enters this state now, it means that he has undergone a true transformation. Zanpakutō appeared in his hand. Aizen pointed at Shimo with the tip of the knife, and said, "No matter what, Shimo-kun, your existence is worthy of my appreciation. So far, among the opponents who have fought with me, only you can make me go all out, and even have to lay out several strategies for this. Like Yamamoto, who has the title of the strongest Shinigami, is just a wonder-wise who abolished his combat power." Aizen's eyes were indifferent, and there seemed to be a cold smile on the corners of his mouth. "Perhaps long ago, you already had the strength that surpassed everything. But you can't let go of everything completely due to some kind of cumbersome emotions. No recognition result. This is the biggest difference between you and me." His words did not cover the twitches, but directly passed to the ears of the Shinigami people below. After hearing these remarks, the expressions on everyone's faces were mixed. Shock, doubt, attachment, trust, different identities, showing different looks. But it's worthy of affirmation that people who believe in Shimo have never changed their position from beginning to end. Only existences like Omeda Marichio can waver between belief and doubt. As for Shimo's strength, no one has any doubts. Advertisement. Since it defeated Zaraki Kenpachi in an undamaged posture, the legend of Shimo was spread in the Jingling Palace. Since then, his record has become more and more terrifying. While shocking people, they also put forward thinking. Where is the limit of Kyōraku Shimo's strength, the captain of the 3rd Division? Right now, the Shinigami people can no longer intervene in the battle between the two. The horrible Ryatsu oppression alone prevented these captains from getting close. As for Aizen's Kyōraku Shimo, it is even more so that the powerful captain cannot join the battle. Even Yamamoto Genyanagisai Shigekuni is no exception. The broken bee bit his lower lip, staring at the top with complicated eyes, like a whispered word, floating in the wind. Shimo must win in the sky. The tip of Kyōraku Shimo's knife still pointed towards Shimo, Aizen said calmly. "Let's stop here. I've spent enough time here. After beheading you, I will go to the real Karakura town to create the king's key. I will eventually take its place in the Spirit Palace and stand on top of that day." Hearing this, Shimo's eyes drooped slightly, holding the arm holding Shaoyan and raising it. The blades face each other, and Ryatsu releases. Above the zenith, the corners of his mouth raised slightly and said, "Is it just to make the effort just to become that stiff existence?" The black Ryatsu and the purple Ryatsu condensed into substance, and immediately collided in the sky. Boom! The horrible oppression and impact were covered in Karakura town. Centering on two people, diverging towards the surrounding. After Aizen officially became the existence beyond Shinigami and the virtual, the quality of its Ryatsu has already approached Shimo. As for the amount of Ryatsu, it may still be insufficient. After all, the 100,000 level ladder of time is not a display. Hearing Shimo's words, Aizen was slightly startled, but he was about to forget about it. The enemy's words may also be provocative. Changing the opponent's mood is also a tactic. Advertisement in this regard, Aizen is the real expert. With the continuous release of Jijin Ryatsu, the sky on Shimo's side seems to return to the state of darkness once again. Although I don't want to admit it, it's rare that we can agree on something. The battle should indeed be over. Aizen raised his chin slightly, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and agreed. Then, let's start. The moment the voice fell, the rendering of the color of the sky covered the distance. It's like in a war, opposing camps. Ink black and lavender, the sky of Karakura town presents two distinct situations. It turns out that Urahara Kazuki's previous preparations are still very useful. The materialized Ryatsu of jet black, and the materialized Ryatsu of lavender, continue to spread towards the distance. Under this powerful pressure, even the captain-level existence is under extreme pressure. If the city is not replaced, it is estimated that the humans in the nearby cities will be completely wiped out by this oppressive force. With the release of Jijin Ryatsu, weird lines gradually appeared in Shimo's eyes. The textures are intricate and gradually merged together, transforming into a clock-like appearance. Seeing this, Aizen narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a guessing tone. Shimo-kun's solution? Straight is an awesome power 0.0. However, when Shimo on the opposite side heard this, he shook his head and said with a light smile. I'm sorry to tell you, Aizen, from beginning to end, I didn't have a master solution. This is just another type of shikai. Hearing that, Aizen's expression was slightly startled, and he even couldn't understand Shimo's words. The same Zanpakutō, in different shikai, can actually show a completely different level of Ryatsu increase? Shimo's forehead, the corners of his mouth raised, and a dangerous smile appeared on his face, saying. Exactly, I hope you can withstand the next attack, Aizen. Under the shocked eyes of everyone, Shimo said the shikai words of dawn. Permeating everything, the line of time, at this point, the world has changed in his eyes. Chapter 203 Aizen's response, Hado in the tremor space. Advertisement countless golden threads are wrapped around the world in Shimo's eyes. Whether it is a person, shinigami, or a dead thing, no one can show speciality in Shimo's eyes. The intricate golden threads spread and entangled toward the end of the world. You seem to be different from just now. After enduring the previous slash, Aizen has no more contempt. He already regards Shimo as an opponent in the same realm as himself, even if Shimo is not as good as he imagined, showing his own solution. But right now, Shimo's state is really unusual. In those eyes with clock patterns, no emotional fluctuations can be seen. It's like, under his gaze, everything is indistinguishable. It's not just me who changed, Aizen. Shimo maintained the eye of time, calmly said, and this world. He spread his hands as if embracing this time. However, with Shimo's behavior, Karakura town is also changing. Rumble. Crazy collapse in ruined buildings, continuous collapse of the ground. The sky, the clouds, and even the souls in the air are constantly disappearing. The scene like the end of the world is constantly presented in front of everyone. The Shinigami crowd, led by Urahara Kazuki, chose to leave the city temporarily and arrived at the location of the Turning Pillar. The existence of the Turning Pillar is to maintain the existence of the false Karakura town. If they are destroyed, then the present Karakura town will come here again. At that time, the entire city will appear unprotected on the battlefield of Shimo and Aizen. With the fragile soul of ordinary humans, it is impossible to resist this terrifying oppressive force. Even Shinigami players are unstoppable pressure, enough to transform the human soul. There is nothing between stares and breaths. Everyone, please be sure to stabilize the Ryatsu state of the Turning Pillar. Urahara Kazuki's expression is solemn, and he doesn't mean to be joking at all. Think about it, don't you want to see the scream of the end of the world? Advertisement at the moment, Shinigami can't participate in the battle, but Ryatsu who instills themselves can still do it. Maintaining stability in this world is the Shinigami's job. When I saw this scene, Aizen's pupils shrank to the smallest state, and the white pupils looked very strange against the black-white of the eyes. How is this possible? With his current level, he could clearly perceive that the destruction in front of him was caused by Shimo. However, without the slightest change in Ryatsu, how did he achieve this scene before him? What is this ability? Aizen can't understand the existence of Shimo. He raised the Zanpakutō in his hand, and the lavender Ryatsu exudes xenon fluorine on it. Aizen, has the faith in your heart shaken? Shimo's mouth raised slightly. The smile seems flat in the evening with a ridiculous Fang Zhong. Why is there such a problem? You who claim to be beyond Shinigami in the virtual realm, are there things that you cannot understand? Or do you fear the failure that is about to come to you? Hearing this, Aizen's falling arm was slightly stagnant, and his eyes looked a bit low. Want to know? Shimo continued, I might as well try to drop Kyōraku Suigetsu. Perhaps, in the case of an attack, you can comprehend what my abilities are. In the third state of Shikai, Shimo seems to have the bonus of other states. Not only the eyes that see through the timeline of all things, but also his other abilities, more perfectly displayed. Ultimate's cut and go ghost, perfect virtual system. What happens when Shinigami's Shunpo and Urankar's soundtrack combine? What if, on top of this, gain another blessing of space power? No one knows the result, even Shimo tried it for the first time. When it puts its ideas into action, his figure instantly surpassed the limitation of space and came directly in front of Aizen. Advertisement: the blood-red blade was raised, and the moment Kyōraku Suigetsu fell, it seemed to greet him. Boom! The bright light burst out at the moment of the collision. Like a volcanic eruption that has been silent for hundreds of years or even thousands of years, the breathtaking feeling permeates the entire city, and even spreads farther away. The moment the blades were handed over, Ryatsu burst and flew, surging in air, making a terrifying roar, surging above the bends of Karakura town. The eye-like gap between Aizen's eyebrows opened and closed, and a strange light appeared in it. Is it just a strengthening of oneself? If this is the whole card you are relying on, then you have to say sorry. The ability of space explosion and space cutting is attached to the sniffing blade at the same time. With the heavy and sharp remaining at the same time, Shimo's slash became extremely terrifying. Especially when Ultimate Kendo 897 broke out, it even tore a huge gap in the sky. Facing such a powerful attack, Aizen raised his left hand, and at this moment the surrounding space trembled. Shimo raised his brows slightly, and the space near him was under his control. Aizen can use his own Ryotsu to affect the surrounding space, which is already a matter of separation. However, this was not the result he wanted. A dazzling white light suddenly appeared in his strange eyes, which were black and white. In an instant, an unimaginable super Ryotsu wall formed around Aizen's body. Millions of Ryotsu shields are condensed and compressed around him, resisting all the effects of Shimo's slash. The huge spirit child circulated around him, turned into a lavender dragon, and uttered his own roar at Shimo. Aizen couldn't notice the change in his expression in the blazing sunlight. The space shuddered, and in the face of this terrifying oppression, cracks began to appear. The lavender dragon, thousands of meters long, roared above the sky. The unsentimental dragon eyes stared directly at the figure that looked like an ant in front of him. Aizen's voice was low and solemn, and said, Hadoji Juju 5 Swirling Dragons of Destruction. Chapter 204 Timeline Advertisement. The release of Kido will vary according to the user's Ryotsu, resulting in completely different powers. Shimo is a good example. As the existence of Ultimate Kido, the Kido he released has surpassed most shinigami. And because of Ryotsu, even the Kido who sings abruptly is more powerful than the Kido sung by some captain-level shinigami. In other words, Aizen's attack this time can definitely destroy the entire Karakura town. The mighty momentum covered the sky of Karakura town. Shinigami's face is lightened, and the speed of instilling Ryotsu into the turning pillars has accelerated a bit. If Hado, number 99, attacked Karakura town in this posture, the entire city would definitely collapse. Then turning the boundary pillar has no meaning for existence. At that time, the real Karakura town will come, and Aizen will be able to implement his plan. Genesis King Ki. While attacking Shimo, it also prompted his plan to continue. Aizen, still the Aizen, he has never changed his mentality because of a failure. Facing the ferocious dragon roaring in the sky, Shimo's expression did not change much. Although the power is amazing, and has produced a lot of pressure on himself. But from Shimo's point of view, all forms of Aizen's attacks are useless. The so-called Hado of the 99, for him, is not even as powerful as a real slash. Because, as the Ryotsu structure, the fierce fighting dragon has actually appeared in the world in Shimo's eyes. The lingering timeline tightly wound his huge body. The purple and gold are intertwined, but it also gives people a dazzling feeling. Pity in Shimo's eyes, the lines turned like a walking clock. Gently raised the sai in his hand, a faint golden light appeared on the blood-red blade, like a rising sun. Under the sky full of blackness, Ryotsu cut through the darkness, and cut it straight down. Roar. The lavender dragon roared, and its huge body twisted on the sky, setting off a storm of wild hunting, and swept towards Shimo. Boom. The roar resounding in the world, as if opening up the world. Advertisement. This deafening sound echoed in several nearby cities. Aizen is bound to win this attack. Ryotsu, who has surpassed Shinigami in imaginary, has completely exploded. However, something unexpected happened to him the moment the roar ended. The lavender dragon actually began to disintegrate like nothingness. What the hell is it? Upon seeing this, Aizen's breathing was stagnant, his expression subconsciously changed. Starting from the dragon's head, Lingza was like an avalanche, disintegrating in a large area. Moreover, the rate of collapse is getting faster and faster. Like snow under the blazing sun, there is no resistance. Why? 5 swirling dragons of destruction can't resist even an ordinary slash. What happened in Aizen's voice? There is a trace of final madness hidden. Why does your slash have such a powerful force? Shimo withdrew up, his face was full of indifferent expressions. Is this your real Shikai ability? Aizen is a little gloomy in the sunlight, and his emotions are gradually disintegrating. Shimo doesn't want to explain too much about Aizen's problem. The collapse of 5 swirling dragons of destruction is nothing more than that he cut off the timeline on it. From the source of time, erase it completely. If you have to compare, this ability is somewhat similar to Baragan's aging power. It's just more domineering and incomprehensible. Baragan's power of aging can be solved with the forbidden technique Kido, the time stops. And Shimo's cutting timeline belongs to the more powerful power of time that overrides it. Shimo raised his eyes slightly and looked at Aizen. The pattern of the rotating clock reflects the complex thoughts in Aizen's heart. However, at the moment of facing Shimo, Aizen's heartbeat stopped suddenly, as if stuck in stagnation. These eyes. Aizen gritted his teeth, trying to use Hogyoku's power to understand the existence in front of him. Advertisement. However, when his Ryotsu tempted the past, it immediately disintegrated. Just like when the 5 swirling dragons of destruction disappeared before, there was no sign at all. Aizen was shocked, unable to understand what was in front of him. What if I can understand the collapse of Ryotsu during the confrontation with Ryotsu before? At this moment, everything that happened before his eyes has exceeded his cognitive scope. Is this the power of time? However, he has also mastered the Kido forbidden technique, and time has stopped. Why, it doesn't work at all. From the time he started fighting with Shimo, Aizen has been maintaining the Kido forbidden technique. However, even so it is also unstoppable, the power of time that stops eclipsing. The most terrifying thing is after merging with Hogyoku thoroughly, Aizen is convinced that he has completely broken the boundary between Shinigami and virtual, and successfully surpassed the dimension of the two. As long as Shu was pressed, he was at the same level as Shimo. But under this circumstance, how could Hado, the 99th Hado that he had done his best, be defeated by an extraordinary slash? After disintegrating 5 swirling dragons of destruction completely, Shimo once again experienced the power of the third Shikai. This completely unreasonable ability has already touched the realm of God in the true sense. After disintegrating Aizen's attack, it's time to try the last step. Because of the clock-like patterns in his Chan Nuo Jiao eyes, Aizen could not see Shimo's state of mind at the moment from his eyes. But the intuition from Hogyoku tells him that the other party has already moved to kill. Shimo is holding the thin red slender blade, slowly moving towards Aizen's direction. As he approached, Aizen also narrowed his eyes slightly, constantly mobilizing his Ryatsu, trying to prevent Shimo's next attack. However, when Shimo was less than 10 meters away from him, he suddenly stopped. I saw Shimo's hands like a pianist, gently stroking in the air. Immediately, an inexplicable and ominous premonition emerged in Aizen's heart, as if it would disappear in the next moment. However, Shimo frowned slightly and said in his heart, "Completely cut off Aizen's timeline, it seems to cause unimaginable consequences." Chapter 205 Countdown Advertisement. This is not Shimo's alarmist talk. The so-called unimaginable consequences are for this world. The existence of Aizen has an irreplaceable effect on this world. If it were just a normal way of death, it might not rise to such a level. But the timeline is different. This involves the level of the world, and is related to the normal operation of the entire world. Aizen undoubtedly plays an extremely important role in the 3 realms. Thinking of this, Shimo turned his eyes slightly and looked down at Kurosaki Ichigo among the Shinigami crowd. After the death of Zael Aporo, his replica doll disappeared. After that, Kurosaki Ichigo was responsible for protecting the safety of the wounded, as far as possible to prevent them from being injured by the aftermath of the battle. Under the observation of Shimo's Eye of Time, the timeline involved by Kurosaki Ichigo is more complicated. His fate is even related to the fate of the entire world. It seems that it can only be filmed in a conventional way. Shimo said to himself. Aizen saw Shimo suddenly standing still, and while skeptical, she also began to mobilize her own Ryatsu, trying to defeat Shimo in a frontal battle. So as to continue his plan. In any case, what needs to be done right now is to kill Kyōraku Shimo. In Aizen's weird eyes, there was a hint of determination. The butterfly wings behind 897 flapped, and an astonishing storm erupted above Karakura town, sweeping the entire sky. In the next moment, several beams of light rose into the sky. Aizen's white butterfly wings spread out, his back leaning against the dozens of purple beams of light. Above the sky, like a divine punishment, a terrifying oppressive force descended on and destroyed the remaining buildings in Karakura's eyes. His behavior became the last straw to crush the camel. There is a moment when the ninth of fear comes. A crackling sound came from outside the turning pillar. Dense cracks have appeared on the turning pillar. Urahara Kazuki's expression was slightly solemn and said softly, "Even if the captain-level Shinigami instills Ryatsu into it, it can't hold it anymore. The materials used to make the turning pillars have a gap in the endurance, and there is a long time for fighting, but they only reached Yang." Hearing that, Jashiro Yukitaki's expression was a bit ugly and asked, "Expect how long it will last?" Urahara Kazuki stretched out his palm and stroked it on the turning pillar, feeling the change of the material with his Ryatsu. 30 seconds. This is the limit of turning the boundary pillar. Advertisement. He looked at the crowd, his tone was full of solemn meaning. If the world is broken, Karakura in Soul Society will return to this world in 100 times. What does this mean? I want you to know better than me. Shinigami's expressions became more and more ugly, but they were helpless. What we can do now? Urahara Kazuki turned around, looking deep at the battle in the distance. That is to pin all hopes on Shimo-kun. When the voice fell, I saw him take out a small doll from his arms. Under the surprised eyes of everyone, he moved a few times on the chest of the doll. Moses, Moses. Urahara Kazuki said to the doll's ear, "Can you hear me, please?" In the distant sky, Shimo suddenly heard a faint voice in his ear. Under the storm, the voice was faint, but it was very clear. "Check help." Shimo's expression is a bit weird. "I'm in a decisive battle here, what is Urahara Kazuki doing? Also, how did he penetrate Aizen's Ryatsu blockade?" However, considering the identity of the person who passed the message, Shimo felt that all this was justified. A scientist after all turned to Bia at Jiegui, Kazuki? The Shinigami crowd heard the voice coming from the doll. At this time, they discovered that this doll is a bit familiar. If you ignore the rough appearance and look at it roughly, there is a bit of Shimo's shadow. Shimo-kun, there are still 30 seconds to turn the pillar, oh no. Now there are only 20 seconds left. Urahara Kazuki's mouth raised slightly, and his voice was a little deep, more than this time. Turning the boundary pillar will collapse, and the real Karakura town will come. When the voice fell, the connection between the doll and Shimo was disconnected. Urahara Kazuki patted it a few times, with an inexplicable tone. The staff is exhausted. It's a pity, Shimo-kun's Ryotsu is not easy now. When he raised his head, he saw the complicated eyes of everyone. Advertisement among them is shinigami. His eyes seemed to be a little bit wrong. Shimo got a message from Urahara Kazuki, his eyes were dimmed, and he took a lot of seriousness. Aizen, time is running out. He looked at Aizen, who was like a god, and said indifferently. It's time to end this inexplicable war. Aizen's state seems to be something wrong. The skin on the face has a tendency to crack, oh? It seems that Urahara Kazuki told you something very important. Aizen has a weird tone, and the white butterfly wings behind him flapped, making the storm in the sky more violent. At this moment, there are no complete buildings in Karakura town, and there are even few complete ruins. Countless rubble collided in the storm. Shimo raised his brows slightly, and looked at Aizen with a slightly different look. This guy seems to be evolving towards the next stage. The scene where I cut off the timeline of 5 swirling dragons of destruction before, once again stimulated Aizen. The desire for power made him start to evolve again. Let's stop here. Shimo lifted his palm slightly, and Shen's blade was facing the palm of his hand. Without the slightest hesitation, the aim fell directly into his palm. Immediately, blood red and black rays of light rose up into the sky, forming a huge beam of light, and the beam of light formed by Aizen Ryotsu, divided into hangly. This is your last time. Shimo's expression is calm and indifferent, Aizen. At this moment, Aizen's expression was completely stunned, unable to understand what was happening in front of him. Why can't I perceive his Ryotsu at all? What happened? How did this feeling of oppression that made the body unable to contain the trembling? Aizen revealed a trace of unwillingness in his eyes, staring at Shimo. In the end, what happened? Kyōraku Shimo, what have you done? Chapter 206 The Power of Fusion. Advertisement compared to the time when he was in Soul Society, the conspirator who was strategizing. Aizen at this moment seems to be a big gaff. He looked at Shimo with a hint of hysteria. This kind of emotion should appear on him. And when this happens, Shimo has a part of the relationship. But it's Aizen's own mentality, there is a problem. The fusion of Hogyoku not only gave him great strength, but also contributed to the arrogance and conceit in his heart. With the breeding of multiple negative emotions, Aizen's mind gradually became problematic. When he found that power could not solve all problems, his whole person could not maintain the same composure as before. Hearing this, Shimo raised his eyes, and his emptiness fell on Aizen's body. When Aizen stared at the eyes that looked like a reincarnation clock, he was stunned. The light golden light blooms in his eyes. The sense of oppression that is above everything comes on Aizen. Aizen lowered his body, and there was a slight noise from the shoulder bone. Aizen, this is the case. Shikoro said calmly, the gap between you and me is not easily bridged by the integration of Hogyoku. The facts are there, and nothing will change if you accept it or not. The moment his voice fell, Aizen's facial expression became a bit clean. The traces of cracked skin on it gradually expanded. This is impossible. I am the strongest. Aizen's voice was almost a low growl. Shimo was not moved by Fang, walked slowly towards Aizen. At this moment, his state is like the third Shikai's other way of using. Modify the timeline. This is Shimo's first use of this ability, and its power is beyond his imagination. Cutting off the timeline comes from the power above the humiliation. And to modify the timeline, obviously requires more power than before. So, there was a brief fusion with Shimo himself. This also led to its own consumption of Ryotsu, which has reached an astonishing value. According to Shimo's own estimation, if you change to another captain, not to mention others, just refer to Muguruma Kensai, it is estimated that it will last for a second, and it will be directly hollowed out. Only by his existence with more than 100,000 time ladder Ryotsu bonuses can he use this ability freely. Shiguo walked slowly towards Aizen with a calm expression. Advertisement in his eyes, countless golden timelines are floating and dancing in the air. Touching one of them casually will cause unimaginable consequences. Aizen releases Ryotsu, the dozens of beams of light behind him merge, and the lavender light renders the sky. The beam of light moved and pressed towards Shimo's obstacles. Below, the entire city showed signs of collapse. Aizen Ryotsu's strength has completely exceeded the limit that Karakura can bear. However, click. Amidst the roaring storm, a clear cracking sound was particularly harsh. Shimo stretched out his palm and erased the timeline above the beam of light. Following this, the beam of light collapsed and turned into a sky full of spirits, flooding the entire city. Aizen's pupils are shrinking, his teeth are clenching, and when he is about to launch the next attack, suddenly, a sharp pain came from his shoulder bone. Click, click like glass hit by a stone. The creamy and substantive Ryotsu skin outside its body cracked and dropped. Click. The first to fall off was obviously the huge butterfly wings that were conspicuous. The cracking sound came from the 3 pairs of white butterfly wings, and immediately fell off Aizen's back. The moment Ryotsu escaped, the white skin continued to fall off. However, Hogyoku also plays its role here. The ability of speeding recovery is constantly being stimulated. The white skin that fell off was also filled up with it. Fall off above the sky, it is like white snowflakes. However, in a short time, Hogyoku's recovery speed was no longer comparable to the speed at which the white skin fell off. Impossible. Aizen has already sensed this. How can Hogyoku's power have its limits? Shimo's palm slowly dropped, and his face calmly spoke. Can't understand, Aizen? What a simple and easy to understand truth. Have you already reached such a point in Yujo? Seeking flowers. Oh. Just like Negri's creed, there is no such thing as beautiful words. Hogyoku, the same is true. Hearing that, Aizen's heartbeat suddenly stopped, and his brain was completely blank. Advertisement. Shimo's words had an unimaginable impact on it. But soon, he recovered. Aizen gritted his teeth, a trace of unwillingness appeared in his eyes. Cannot accept. The moment the voice fell, he launched a new round of attacks towards Shimo. As he said, he could not accept such a fact. The snow-white blade raised high and slashed towards Shimo. At this moment, the two were only 1 step away. However, when the blade hit Shimo's chest, it suddenly stopped. A slight depression appeared under the blade. Aizen realized that with his existing power, he couldn't even break through. With a full blow, the only result was a depression on his skin. The scene before him trampled on the power he was proud of. Unwilling, cancer-mad, full of Aizen's heart. From this, on his chest, lavender light bloomed again. Hogyoku, responding to Aizen's thoughts, once again entered the stage of evolution. After seeing Ryotsu skyrocketing, Aizen's eyes shone with light. After evolution, the winner is me after all. However, Shimo was completely unmoved. Above its handheld, red and black rays of light are intertwined, and the invisible oppressive force permeates its surroundings. No need to struggle. Evolving again is also irreparable to the line of time that has changed. Shimo's mouth raised slightly. Thousands of fingers are like playing a piano child. Light nuggets. Strange fluctuations spread from his fingertips. Aizen's body suddenly froze in place, even his expression gradually solidified. Next moment, above Aizen's soul, a rainbow of light was released. Countless black chains spread out from his soul, swallowing him completely. 0. Chapter 207. Timeline Modification, Seal, Advertisement. The transforming sample disintegrated, turned into countless fine crystal powder, scattered in the air. Among them, Shinigami also escaped, so there is no need to continue the operation of the turning pillar. Dense black chains spread out from Aizen's soul, blocking his arms and legs. At this moment, the aura above his soul is being infinitely weakened. Shimo stuck out his palm and locked the golden timeline on Aizen. Like a musician who plucks the strings, flicking his fingers on it changes Aizen's destiny. Destiny opens. Hogyoku is silent. Shimo's expression changed slightly, and when he modified the timeline, he noticed that Ryotsu was draining like a flood. His remaining Ryotsu can't last for long. Evolution breaks off. Soul. Aizen was struggling frantically under the chain to 900. His Ryotsu erupted constantly, causing the surrounding space to tremble, and the palace shattered. It set off a huge storm, sweeping the entire Karakura town. The real Karakura town is here and has begun to return. If that city is caught in this storm, it will inevitably be shattered. Shimo's gaze remained unchanged, his calm gaze swept across, and he said indifferently. Banned. The moment the voice fell, the storm above the sky suddenly stopped, all the smoke and dust dispersed, leaving 2 figures standing in the air. Aizen's expression was a bit dazed, unable to understand what was happening in front of him. Why, I can't perceive Hogyoku's will anymore. Is this your ability, Shimo-kun? At the end, although the voice is slight, there are faint blue veins beating on the forehead. Sweat slipped off his forehead for the first time. This is an incredible thing for Aizen, but in his opinion, everything is inferior to the belief that Hogyoku's will disappears. Hogyoku has completely integrated with himself. A look of determination flashed across Aizen's eyes. As early as the moment Shimo launched an attack to smash it, Hogyoku and himself were completely integrated. Aizen can feel the existence connected to his own destiny. However, Hogyoku's will seem to fall into a deep sleep like death. No matter whether he uses Ryotsu or his own willpower, he cannot motivate Hogyoku to change at all. Aizen, this is the fate. Shimo looked at him lightly, his expression on his face didn't change much. Advertisement. It's no use defying. As Zanpakutō said, you are destined to be sealed. Hearing that, Aizen's pupils shrank suddenly, a look of horror flashed in his eyes. He finally remembered. When I first saw Shimo, that indescribable feeling. Time. All this is the power of time. When Shimo came out of the narrow room, it was this strange power that caught his attention. Thinking of this, a wry smile appeared on Aizen's mouth. Is that so? As the seal continued to deepen, the black chain clung to Aizen's body on the soles of the feet. I already understand, Shimo-kun. Your strength comes from your own soul. I will be in the seal, trying to hold my own strength. Look forward, we will see you again one day. Above the black chain, a faint purple light was exuding. That is Aizen's Ryotsu. In this scene, he seemed to be able to break free at any time. Shimo feels relieved about this. Break through the seal? I never doubted your ability. Shimo's mouth raised slightly, smiling inexplicably, and said, It is not this seal that restricts you, nor the so-called self. He looked behind Aizen. The sky was just right, sunny and shining. Afterwards, Shimo looked at Aizen again and continued. But this world. Hearing that, Aizen was startled slightly. A smile gradually appeared on his face. The corners of his mouth were grinning, and a laugh came from his mouth, and there was a tendency to become more and more crazy. Ha, ha 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 ha. It's really surprising. Aizen's hands have been blocked by chains, and can no longer move. But the expression on his face fully reflects his mentality at the moment. Shimo-kun, I now regret everything I have done. Advertisement. If I knew you earlier, maybe. He did not continue to speak, but kept a smile on the corner of his mouth. At this point, the chain has clung to his neck, gradually sealing the last trace of Aizen. Interesting. As the last two words were spoken, Aizen's consciousness completely disappeared over Karakura town. Everything belongs to silence. On the ground, at the moment when Aizen Ryotsu was sensed that Aizen Ryotsu had completely disappeared, the tension in everyone's hearts was completely relaxed. At this moment, there was a sudden violent Ryotsu wave in the far direction. Once again, everyone's hearts mentioned their throats. But soon, a figure dyed red from the snow flew from a distance. Captain of the 4th Division, Eggflower Lie. His face is a bit pale, and his condition is obviously not good. Obviously, the fluctuation of Ryotsu just now has an inseparable relationship with her. However, only Yunohana Retsu came back, which has already explained a lot of things. The first Espada, Coyote Stark, has a low probability of surviving. In the sky, Shimo looked at the human seal in front of him. At this moment, Aizen is wrapped in black chains all over his body, and even a trace of Ryotsu cannot be revealed. The 0.0 light of the lavender at first was completely hidden, without revealing it at all. There is no possibility of breaking free. Shimo shook his head. This time the seal came from the modification on the timeline. Not to mention Aizen, even if he wants to unlock the seal, it takes a lot of Ryotsu and energy. However, he suddenly recalled the moment before Aizen was completely sealed. That weird posture and the emotion of no worries and fears is truly reassuring. Is this Aizen? Shimo's eyes dropped slightly, and he said with a smile. It's a person who can't guess. He stretched out his hand, pressed it on the chain, and whispered. As you said, I am looking forward to our next meeting. Chapter 208. The role of the timer advertisement with the seal of Aizen, through the Kido enchantment, after adding another seal. Shimo opened the door to pass through and sent it directly to a space he had created. This is the space he created by integrating the stagnation of space and the ability of space cutting, which is isolated from the world. As for the fate of Aizen afterwards, it is still the same as in the original, and he is sent to the 8th level of hell. As for whether Central 46 will further impose additional punishment on him, it is not known. He didn't have the idea of keeping Aizen in his own space all the time. Shimo fell from the air and came to the crowd with a faint smile on his face, and said, Everyone, the war is over. The voice fell, everyone's expressions were slightly startled, and they didn't react for the time being. But soon, surprises appeared on their faces. Win, have you won? Captain Shimo won the final victory, saving the world and Soul Society. Finally, it's over. Unexpectedly, I would survive. Shinigami couldn't understand what happened. Although the result is good, they still have a lot of doubts in their hearts. For example, how did Shimo win? What happened after he merged Zanpakutō with himself? In the eyes of Shinigami, Shimo only fiddled a few times in the air to suppress Aizen's Ryotsu, and made countless black chains spread out of his body. The chain that touched the soul directly sealed Aizen's. Immediately afterwards, Aizen's figure disappeared completely in Karakura town, without any trace. At this moment, everyone understands this war, which concerns the fate of countless people, is finally over. However, although the Soul Society side won the final victory, the losses were extremely heavy. Although no team leader and adjutant were killed, it is undeniable that Yu Lingting's dignity has been trampled on the ground. Except for a small group of captains and lieutenants, including the captain Yamamoto Motokazai Shigekuni. Several captains and adjutants were seriously injured. It even endangered the life of cattle. As the captain of the 3rd Division, Kyōraku Shimo seemed to have become the biggest hero in this war. With his own power, he sealed Aizen and ended the war. Advertisement in front of him, the role of other people was a little trivial. In addition, Gotei 13 also lost 2 other captains. The first 3rd Division Captain Ichimaru Jin, the former 9th Division Captain Tusen Kanami. Tusen Kanami, who thought he was dead, appeared again in Karakura town, which made Shinigami once again doubt the possibility of soul resurrection. However, it turns out that Tsusankanami's resurrection is nothing but the resurrection of memory in the body. Its soul has become the nourishment of Zale Aporo. As for Ichimaru Jin, it was beyond everyone's expectations. In this war, he launched his own solution, attacked Aizen, and completely destroyed his body. It is a pity that Hogyoku's evolutionary power made his sneak attacks fail, but after all, it didn't play a big role. Although no one would deny Ichimaru Jin's credit, no one would forget everything he did. The defect of Soul Society alone is enough to drive it to hell for thousands of years. Let alone again, how many crimes he committed during the time he was lurking beside Aizen. Returning to Gotei 13 is not possible anymore. I can only hope that Central 46 will judge him to be sentenced to hell for thousands of years. When everyone was astonished, a gap was torn in the sky again. The deep darkness radiated from the crack. Seeing this scene, Shinigami people subconsciously shook their Zanpakutō. Thank you. It looks like we are late. A soft voice came from the crack. Immediately, a figure dressed in pink haori walked out of it. Kyōraku Shunsui was surprised, and there was an unconcealable horror in his eyes. The scene before him can be said to be completely beyond his imagination. There were so many barbarians, almost razing the entire city to the ground. Even more terrifying is in the Ryatsu of the Shinigami crowd below. His own teacher, the Captain Yamamoto Modianagisai Shigekuni, was even more scorched and his skin was cracked. Ryatsu was mournful to the ultimate point. If it weren't for Katetsu Izan to help him with treatment, Kyōraku Shunsui was worried that he would immediately take up the post of captain. He led the reinforcements returning from Hueco Mundo and flew down from the air to the Shinigami crowd. Everyone, can anyone tell me what happened? Advertisement. Kyōraku Shunsui touched the stubborn stubble on his chin and said with some embarrassment. Why did we only stay in Hueco Mundo for a short period of time? Here, is it like this? Also, how about Aizen? Everyone looked at each other and immediately laughed. The atmosphere became active for a while. Upon seeing this, Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes revealed a hint of relief. He looked at Shimo, only to find that Shimo's gaze was staying on him. The two Kyōraku family looked at each other on the west side of Karakura Town 900, and smiles appeared on their faces at the same time. Although I don't really want to interrupt the current atmosphere. Jashiro Yukitaki rubbed his nose and said in a destructive voice. Shimo-kun, what's the matter with that seal? Also, ahem, where is Aizen now? His face was a little pale, and the battle put a great load on his body. It is estimated that for a long time in the future, he will be resting in Yugantang. After hearing this, Shimo's smile remained unchanged. In this regard, he had anticipated this situation a long time ago. However, Shimo will naturally not reveal the ability of his third Shikai. As for guessing, just let them guess anyway. When the time comes, it will be fine if he doesn't admit it. He set his sights on Urahara Kazuki and explained. This matter should go to Kazuki. As the creator of Hogyoku, his understanding of Hogyoku is much deeper than mine. And what I did was to give Hogyoku a spatial seal. When the voice fell, Urahara Kazuki's expression suddenly stagnated. With the gazes of Shinigami who kept gathering, a bad premonition suddenly emerged in his heart. It seems that this time, Shimo-kun was scammed by Shimo-kun? Chapter 209 Slippery Fish Advertisement. Ahem. Urahara Kazuki tried to avoid the topic with a cough. But under the gaze of everyone's eyes, his method of changing the subject didn't have any effect. After realizing this, Urahara Kazuki's face collapsed and said helplessly. I am not sure about this. Although channeling was researched by me, it is not all the result of my research. I'm only involved in half of it. He spread his hands and looked at everyone helplessly. The other half is Aizen's research. When the two Hogyoku emerged, the Hogyoku is complete. After that, I only know what function it has afterwards. Everyone seemed dissatisfied with what Urahara Kazuki said. However, they have nothing to do. Through this war, the Shinigami of Soul Society also realized the importance of characters like Urahara Kazuki. The existence of this Schwanzuzu alone saved millions of lives. It even intercepted Aizen's conspiracy in advance, giving Shimo enough time. However, it was also because of some of his actions that promoted the occurrence of this war. All in all, the nature of Urahara Kazuki in this war is similar to that of Ichimaru Jin. But relatively speaking, his nature is much lighter than Ichimaru Jin. Ichimaru Jin didn't know how much Shinigami's blood was on his hands during the incubation period. Just from the Captain Hollow incident, Madara can be seen. This matter, put it aside for the time being. The old and heavy voice resounded in the crowd, suppressing all noises. Yamamoto Genryu Emperor has recovered a little Ryatsu at this time, and his state has turned a lot. The Karakura town problem needs us to solve even more. The breaking of the turning pillar caused Karakura in Soul Society to appear in the ruins. Fortunately, after a short period of treatment, Shinigami has recovered a lot. And the arrival of reinforcements also eased their pressure a lot. After the team members left one after another, only a few captains remained nearby. Yamamoto, Kyōraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, Unohana Retsu, and Urahara Kazuki. Captain Shimo, regarding Aizen's state. Jashiro Yukitaki looked around, noticed Yamamoto Genryusai's expression and said immediately. Advertisement, we want to know more in detail. After all, this is about the entire Soul Society, no, the safety of the three realms. Shimo nodded, understanding what Jashiro Yukitake said. Ever since, he started his own explanation. As for Aizen's current state, you can rest assured. He is now by my side at any time, and I can perceive the slightest change in him. After returning to the Soul Society, I will naturally send Aizen directly to the Infinite Hell. Hearing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yamamoto's eyes flickered, and he didn't say much. Shimo's behavior can be said to be the most in line with his expectations. As long as Aizen is sent to the Infinite Hell, naturally there are enough thousands of segments to be sealed in it. While everyone was discussing, Omeda Marichio ran from a distance out of breath. At the same time as his burly figure, he did not have the aura that the deputy captain of the second squad should have at all. Everyone, captains, Omeda Marichio showed a sullen look on her face, reporting the situation breathlessly. We stared at the northern edge of Karakura and spotted several Arankars. The most powerful of them seems to be the third Espada in the previous battle. Please also captains, hurry up and go to support. Hearing this, Shimo's eyes moved slightly, as if thinking of something. Understood. He walked out of the crowd. I am in good condition, let me solve this matter. Upon seeing Shimo's figure, a look of joy appeared on Omeda Marichio's face. After the previous battle, no one doubted Shimo's combat effectiveness anymore. That magnificent battle scene, I'm afraid it will never be erased from their hearts for a lifetime. In the eyes of some shinigami, the name of Soul Society's strongest captain has been changed in this battle. From Omeda Marichio's point of view, as long as Captain Shimo is on the move, Arankar or something is not a problem at all. Seeing Shimo walk out of the crowd, the other captains stopped talking. As Omeda Marichio thought, even Captain Shinigami had similar thoughts. Captain Shimo, please let me follow. Hitsugaya Dashiro suddenly walked out of the crowd with a firm expression on his face. Advertisement Shimo was a little surprised, but didn't refuse his request either. In that case, please trouble Omeda to lead the way. 10. Omeda Marichio suddenly came back to his senses, a little stumbling Kaido. No recognition result. No problem. After the previous battle, in front of Shimo, he seemed a little cautious. Led by Omeda Marichio, a group of people marched towards the edge of Karakura town. Although Hitsugaya Dashiro was in a state of failure, he still gritted his teeth and followed closely. Are you not reconciled to defeat in the opponent's hands? Shimo stretched out his hand and pressed his head against the opponent's head with his height advantage. The weeping green mang was unfolded from his hand, covering his whole body in an instant. Hitsugaya Dashiro seems to have become a green plant. However, Shimo's Kaido level is still worthy of recognition, and he soon returned to his normal state. Although I was still a little reluctant to fight, I didn't have the load to use Shunpo normally. Hearing Shimo's words, a heavy look appeared on Hitsugaya Dashiro's face. For a long time, he said unwillingly, promise, as the captain, you can't even hurt the opponent. Such a thing as really hearing this, Shimo knew everything in his heart. I still feel that I haven't beaten someone before co-authoring, and now I want to see if the other person was beaten by other characters? The guy who thought you were fine-skinned and tender-faced has a good mentality. Now it seems that it is also a stomach of bad water. Shimo didn't continue after the second enhancement of Hogyoku. Espada's combat power has actually surpassed most of the captains. Captains like Hitsugaya Dashiro who have not even solved their own Zanpakutō and have fully played out are not even the first few Espada's opponents. The group continued on, and after a dozen breaths, they seemed to have arrived at the edge of Karakura town. What you see is the confrontation between the two parties. Among them, the Hueco Mundo party is the third Espada, Tia Harribel and some of the subordinate officers. Bright. Chapter 210 Harribel's decision advertisement. Harribel looked at the Shinigami in front of him with a vigilant face, and after waving the Emperor in his hand tightly, Ryotsu surged on his body. The brown skin carries large and small injuries, and there is also a hint of weakness in his face. Although her injuries were serious, she still stood in front of her subordinate officers, looking directly at the Shinigami. Opposite her, Madarame Mikaku and others were standing by. Because of the previous support of Hueco Mundo, the so-called combat squad, the 11th squad, is the best squad. This also made these fighting fanatics suffocate in their hearts. Now that they have finally found a chance to fight, they are not willing to give up easily. Although if you participate in the battle now, it is very likely that you will die in it. The injured third Espada looks weak, but it is not too difficult to kill a few deputy captain level existences. Right now, the battle can only be transferred to the captain's hands again. And these fighting madmen, taking over the battle of the subordinate officers, is the correct decision. Shimo's voice came from behind Madarame Mikaku. Madarame Mikaku, who held the 900 Maru of Ghost Lamp horizontally, said without looking back. Shimo, you solve this Espada, I will do the rest. As he said, he raised the Hazukimaru in his hand, whipped up a gust of wind, and wanted to launch an attack. However, before he stepped out, he felt a strong force behind him and pulled him back directly. And many more, Shimo's tone was a little helpless. I said you guys are in a hurry? If you want to fight so, wait until everything is over. I will go to the 11th squad to find you, and we will play 3 times a day, for 8 hours at a time. You plan to fully experience the fun of fighting. As soon as he finished speaking, Madarame Mikaku stopped his behavior. Cold sweat slipped from that shiny head. Ahem. Madarame Mikaku tried to hide his embarrassment with a cough. I think fighting is not what I want. Sometimes, experiencing tranquility may be able to take my strength to the next level. Shimo sighed and said, Bia, then you still don't let go. Advertisement for this friend of his own. He obviously got the psychology of the other person. Fighting is what he pursued all his life. Not only Madarame Mikaku, but most of the players in the 11th division. They were influenced by their captain, Zaraki Kenpachi. Of course. Fighting is fighting. If you fight against Shimo's level of existence, you will be abused. Madarame Mikaku is reckless, but not stupid, so, after learning that the ruins in front of me were caused by Shimo, he decisively chose to serve soft, third espada, Tia Harribel. Shimo looked at Arrancar, a somewhat stubborn woman in front of him, and revealed her identity. Aizen has been completely sealed. When he said this, he paused deliberately to allow Harribel enough time to react. Sure enough, an unbelievable look appeared on Harribel's face. How can it be although in the ruins, she once saw the scene of the man fighting Aizen in front of her? But absolutely did not expect that the battle would end so quickly. Aizen, who once surpassed the throne of Hueco Mundo, would really be defeated by the shinigami in front of him. After observing Harribel's expression, Shimo felt confident in his heart and immediately continued. What's your opinion? Hearing that, the shocked look on Harribel's face still maintained. My point of view while reminiscing about Shimo's strength, her brain is running at the fastest speed. What is the purpose of Kyōraku Shimo in front of him? At the beginning, Aizen didn't mention the character of this guy. She bit her teeth vertically and squeaked. After a short period of thought, Harribel finally spoke. Yu and Shinigami are natural enemies. Whether the two are encountered in Hueco Mundo, or in this world, or Soul Society, one of them will inevitably be killed or injured or escaped. So Shimo's mouth raised slightly and interrupted. So you are going to kill me or run away? With all due respect, don't say it's you, Harribel. Even if all Espada came to me, there is no possibility for you to escape. Advertisement. His words, like the knife like cold wind in the winter, pierced Harribel's heart fiercely. Cold, close his heart tightly. Harribel carefully recalled the battle about Shimo. Hueco Mundo. This world she discovered a shocking fact, that is, Shinigami in front of her never appeared embarrassed at any time. Even in the face of Aizen, he still looks calm and unhurried. This discovery made Harribel completely lost the idea of resisting. In battle, there is absolutely no chance of winning. Instead, he will send all his subordinates into the desperate situation of death. Ever since, Harribel made a decision that surprised everyone. She knelt down on one knee and spoke with a very respectful attitude. Master Shimo, I would like to exchange my loyalty for the remaining Arrancar's chance to survive. I hope Lord Shimo can accept. Upon seeing this, her subordinates showed incredible expressions on their faces. Master Harribel, you don't have to do that, we are willing to fight with you to the last minute. Yes, Master Harribel, we still have a chance. When he heard the words of his subordinates, a trace of anger appeared on Harribel's face, and he yelled. To shut up. At this point, do you still want to continue struggling? Faced with such a situation, it is clear that Harribel's idea is the most correct. Dedicating loyalty is the only chance to survive. Although he said that, there was a hint of pain in Harribel's emerald green eyes. If it were not her subordinate officer, she would definitely fight to the last minute. Upon seeing this, Shimo raised his mouth slightly and said with a chuckle. Very well, you made the right decision. I accept your allegiance, Harribel. Chapter 211. Dignity and Freedom. Advertisement. Harribel revealed that she was slightly low, with jin-dong-colored hair scattered, and her eyes drooping, making her expression unclear. However, her attitude already speaks for itself. Madarame Mikaku's face was embarrassed. He reached Shimo's ear and whispered. Shimo, don't you worry about accidents when you do this? As a friend, Madarame Mikaku felt that he could not let his friend go on a path of no return. Shimo glanced at him lightly, then said, Did you forget something? Hearing that, Madarame Mikaku was stunned, and he didn't react for a while, and subconsciously said. What? Ni is also a Vasto Lord Manos Grande, and has now become a member of the 3rd Division. Shimo's expression is calm, telling a fact. Harribel, who was kneeling on one knee, suddenly looked startled when he heard the name Niue. She knows the identity of Nilu in Shimo's mouth. The former owner of his 3rd Espada position is exactly this Neliel II Odelschwank. However, she did not appear in this war, perhaps because of her identity. Of course, according to Shimo's words, Nilu's current life in Soul Society is much better than Hueco Mundo. Does this mean? Harribel raised his head cautiously, ready to observe Shimo's expression from the side, so as to judge the future prospects he might encounter. However, it happened to meet Shimo's smiley eyes. The deep gaze is like a shining star. Harribel trembled, and quickly lowered his head again, not taking another look. Damn it. Shimo only felt that his eyes were dark, and his vision was obscured by the shadows. Damn it. I will never allow this to happen. I saw Myphon Rhodes, with a strong black skin and a tall and burly figure, rushing out of the Aaron car, crossing between Shimo and Harribel. Her face was full of anger, and she stared at Shimo. As Harriber's subordinate officer, his temper is also the most grumpy among the 3 subordinate officers, Arrancar. Seeing Master Harriber in my mind, he was willing to surrender to Shinigami for them. This humiliation immediately detonated the emotions in her heart. In Mi's view, this kind of behavior is absolutely not allowed. In order to maintain the dignity of Harriber, she is willing to give her life. Shimo raised his brows lightly, and didn't put the other person in his eyes at all. Advertisement: it's just an Arrancar that hasn't entered the top 5 numbers. Given her level of strength, it is estimated that Shimo standing here to let her attack will be useless. Back. Seeing the figure in front of him, a panic appeared on Harriber's face, and immediately angered. Master Harriber, please forgive me for not being able to obey your orders this time. Mila had a firm expression, and put her right hand on Zanpakutō on her waist. Never let you lose your freedom for us, bite him away, Golden Lion will. With the call of his return to the blade, Mi also officially returned to the blade between the fluctuations of Ryatsu's light. While the black hair skyrocketed, the Zanpakutō in his hand was replaced with a black épée. Harribel, leave this to you to handle. Shimo didn't even think of taking a second glance at this rice. Shimo was worried about not being able to control her shots. Lin Libel bit his lower lip lightly, low channel. I see. She stood up slowly, we forwarded it, and the next moment she came to Mi Dang. Stop your behavior, Mira. Otherwise, don't blame me for doing it. Mi Fan looked embarrassed, but he still refused to let go of the épée in his hand. Mi Dang, who was dazzled by anger, couldn't judge Harriber's thoughts and hints at all. She only understood that it was impossible for Harribel to become Shinigami's subordinate because of herself and others. Shu and Shinigami are natural enemies. Excuse me, I can't promise. After a brief hesitation, Mi Lee's eyes flashed with a firm look, and immediately raised the black épée in his hand and launched his own attack. Just like her homecoming words, her attack method is like a lioness hunting, and between the opening and closing, there is a fierce meaning. Seeking flowers on his diligent and black arms, there are strong muscles bulging, and there is no feminine softness at all. Really, warrior? Shimo shook his head, approvingly. Upon seeing this, a trace of coldness flashed in Harribel's turquoise eyes. It seems that you insist on that. As soon as the voice fell, Harriber's figure disappeared directly from Myra's eyes. When the black épée fell, it also hit the air directly. Advertisement. Upon seeing this, Mi Fancon shrank suddenly, flipped his arms subconsciously, and attacked behind him. However, her remonstrance is not a little bit worse than that of Harribel. Sorry, Mira. The faint words came from Mign's ear. Immediately, a sharp pain came from the neck, and Migi suddenly lost consciousness. Harriber lifted Mi Lee's neck with one hand, as if carrying a kitten. When, Lord Shimo, she hesitated, Mila, she before he could finish speaking, Shimo interrupted. No need to explain. I have no interest in this guy, you can just take it back with you when the time comes. Hearing this, Harribel nodded subconsciously, and many more? What did he just say? After realizing it, Harribel showed a look of error on his face, looked at Shimo with a very surprised look, and asked hesitantly. Master Shimo, you just said. Shimo smiled on his forehead, with a relaxed tone, and said. As the surviving Espada Arrancar in Hueco Mundo, you are already the highest known combat power of Hueco Mundo. In this case, the task of presiding over the Hueco Mundo situation can only be entrusted to you. Hearing this, Harribel seems to have not recovered from this news. Yes, but Shimo glanced at her lightly and continued. I'm still very relieved of you. Compared to the other Espada, your character is already very good. He looked at the other Arrancar, looked around, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and said. Not to mention, I can open the Black Chamber at any time and go to Hueco Mundo, 0. Chapter 212. Shimo's plan and the person behind it. Advertisement. Hearing this, Harriber's heart trembled inexplicably. She thinks of Shimo's strength before, and she doesn't even have the slightest doubt about what to do with him. At the same time, Harribel also guessed the purpose of Shimo's move. In Hueco Mundo, Espada died, and Aizen was directly sealed. Now in the Suya Palace, she is the only one left, Espada. If when she returned to the Palace of the Night, Harribel should be the only king. And Shimo, for a logical reason, formally took over the entire Hueco Mundo. For him, it didn't take much effort. Shimo's words not only had a certain impact on Harribel's mood. It also caused an unimaginable blow to the Arrancars behind him. In their minds, Aizen is the strongest existence. 903. When it was defeated, it was an existence they couldn't look up to. Now this being said that he can open the Black Chamber at any time and formally go to Hueco Mundo. For Arrancars, this is undoubtedly a sword of Damocles hanging above their heads, which may fall down at any time and cut off their necks. But you can rest assured. Shimo seemed to see these Arrancar thoughts, and said again. I will not interfere with the normal operation of Hueco Mundo. As long as you can stand by yourself, it will naturally be all well. Upon hearing this, the Arrancars seemed to feel relieved for a while. In their eyes, Shimo's existence does not deliberately deceive them. After all, the effort to deceive them may not be as good as Akito smashing it down, and it's a bit easier. Follow the orders of Lord Shimo. One Harribel lowered his head and said with respect in his tone. She was not at all dissatisfied with Shimo's arrangement, on the contrary, she was very happy to comment on this scene. Harribel has enough confidence without the interference of Aizen and the Arrancars, she was able to manage everything within the virtual night palace in an orderly manner. This is a very good development for both Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. As Shimo said, compared to other Espada, advertisement. Harribel's character seems to be too much stronger. While cherishing his subordinates, I also hate the cannibalism between the imaginary and the imaginary. Although a little taciturn, it hides all emotions in the bottom of my heart. All right. Shimo glanced at her calmly and said softly. Open the black cavity and return to Hueco Mundo. For a while at night, I am worried that some stubborn old man will force you to stay. Hearing this, Harribel couldn't help but think of the several pillars of fire that once roared on Karakura's stair. While burning through the sky, it also caused the earth to become anxious. In Harribel's view, Yamamoto, as the captain of Gode 13, is also the ultimate player in power. If it were not restricted by Wanda Wise, Aizen's plan might have been shattered. The black cavity was quietly opened on the ruins of Karakura town. Under the gaze of a member of the 11th Division, Harribel stretched out his palm and directly opened the black cavity. Arrancars entered in file, and seemed to be a bit eager to leave Karakura town at this time. Under the gaze of Shinigami, they seemed to feel the tremendous pressure. Harribel handed Mihai to her other two subordinate officers and told them to leave first. And she stayed at the end, maintaining a black tone. When all the Arrancars had left, Harribel turned around, staring at Shimo for a moment, silent. After a few breaths, she lowered her eyes, turned and walked towards the black cavity. When the black cavity closed and disappeared before their eyes, Shinigami also breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of maintaining a fighting state is also a great test for the heart and soul. After all, not every Shinigami is the 11th squad fighting madman. Hi, Shimo. Madarame Makaku approached Shimo, his bald head gleaming under the reflection of the sun. Aren't you afraid that the captain will be held accountable for this matter? After hearing this, Shimo looked surprised and asked. What's the matter? Madarame Makaku scratched his bright head, wondering. Let go of Arrankar. Shimo smiled with disdain at the corner of his mouth, looked sideways at Madarame Makaku, and said. Advertisement, it's obviously your lack of strength that caused these Arrancars to escape. What does it have to do with Shimo? This matter, everyone present, I want to see it very clearly. He looked around, his extremely threatening gaze swept across everyone. Faced with the threat, the Shinigami nodded again and again, acknowledging. It's really because of the lack of strength of Madara's deputy captain. But you can't blame it all, the opponent is Arrankar of the Espada level. Everyone is responsible for this matter. Captain Shimo is right. A corner of Banri stared at a tomb before him in astonishment. Immediately he turned his head stiffly. There was a groaning sound from outside the neck. You guy before he could continue to speak, Shimo said. Okay, next I'm going to check if there are any missing fish in other places. It is absolutely impossible for Arrankar to escape from here. When the voice fell, Shunpo started, and the whole person disappeared in place. Leave Madarame Makaku alone, gradually petrifying in the wind. With the arrival of reinforcements, Karakura town was gradually restored. With the usual Shinigami team members in the battle, they can't help much. But in terms of washing the floor, the technique is still very skillful. Bai Zhang, their captains. 0.0 every battle will cause unimaginable damage. If things go on like this, these guys have accumulated a lot of experience in the aftermath. Soul Society, at the outer court to the north of Yulingting. A huge piercing gate emits a strong light, many team members are nearby, ready to welcome the return of the captain and deputy captains. The result of the Karakura town battle, they have been informed by the Hell Butterfly. Although Soul Society won in the end, this does not mean that this is something to celebrate. The loss of Soul Society was the heaviest in hundreds of years. Except for most of the captains who were seriously injured, even the captain, known as the strongest Shinigami, was also seriously injured. The fierce battle has already affected the foundation of Soul Society. Chapter 213 The Aftermath and Shimo's doll advertisement. Around Anjimen, the atmosphere is quiet, the team members kept their heads down, without the joy of victory in the war. The seriously injured captain and adjutants took the lead to walk out of the gate. After confirming that there is no more threat in this world, they have already returned to the Soul Society. Considering his own injuries, staying in this world just adds a burden to other team members. Although he has already undergone emergency treatment, because Katetsu Izan Kaido's level is limited, Dan Jawali has experienced a fierce battle. Therefore, the most important thing right now is to treat the wounded. After all, there are not a few seriously injured people, and some of the captain's injuries have threatened their lives. At this time, on the hills near the crossing gate, the team members watched the familiar faces that came out of it, and for a moment there was a bit of choking in their throats. The captains who had always appeared in a powerful posture all showed a weak state at this moment. Even the captain Yamamoto Motoyanagisai Shigekuni is scorched, and his gray beard has disappeared a lot. However, among these captains, there is a strange existence. The eyes of the 14 team members were quickly attracted by him, and a quiet discussion spread among the crowd. Have you noticed, Captain Shimo hasn't changed at all? I remember the information passed back that he was the main force in this war. Is Captain Shimo's strength already so strong? What an awesome existence. Whispering cannot be hidden from the ears of the captain and adjutants. However, when they heard these words, they could only show a bitter smile on their faces, as well as a sense of fear that could not be hidden in the depths of their eyes. The Battle of Kumacho really exceeded their imagination of Shinigami's strength. Whether it's Aizen, Espada Arankar, or Captain Yamamoto Genryusai, or Shimo. The strength they showed was really beyond the scope of their comprehension. It's the scorching hell that is enough to suffocate the entire city. It is not a team leader who can resist it. According to the visual model of the picture at the time, Yamamoto Yuan Liuyan definitely wanted to drag everyone to die together. Under Ryujin Jaka, all beings are equal, and when they think of Shimo's performance, the expression on their faces becomes more complicated. Obviously, it didn't take long for this guy to graduate from the Spiritual Arts Academy. But now, it has surpassed more than 90% of the captains, or in other words, is at the same level as the captain, or even stronger. Advertisement. When the large crossing gate closed, Kyōraku Shunsui stepped forward. His voice was spread out through Ryatsu's fluctuations so that every team member could hear his words clearly. Everyone, due to the serious injury of the captain, it is inconvenient to continue to bear the heavy duty of the team. So during this time, I will organize the post-war reconstruction in the aftermath, and all the major affairs of Godai 13 will be in my hands. I hope everyone can cooperate. At this moment, Kyōraku Shunsui changed from the usual hippie smiling face of the past, and the whole person became serious and solemn. Shimo muttered in his heart while watching, this form is really rare. He knew better about Kyōraku Shunsui. If you want this guy to do a good job outside, it must be a critical juncture for Soul Society outside. You know, even if Aizen rebelled and the Battle of Karakura Town broke out. This guy still looks like a fool. It can be seen from this that Yamamoto Genryusei still occupies a very high position in his mind. There was no objection to Kyōraku Shunsui's words. The injured captains did not show any special expressions. In their minds, Kyōraku Shunsui was the veteran captain, and Yang Gao's prestige was held on the right side of the captains. His usual lazy appearance does not affect his position in everyone's hearts. Seeing this, Kyōraku Shunsui didn't say much and immediately entered the state. All the wounded were taken care of by Katetsu Izan and sent to the 4th Division's integrated ambulance first. In addition, all the team members who can participate in the aftermath work are drawn from the 3rd Division and immediately go to Karakura Town. Besides, Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Urahara Kazuki, who was back with him, and said, Mr. Urahara, there is one thing that needs your help. Because Urahara Kazuki has not returned to Godai 13 yet, he cannot be called by the captain's name. Urahara Kazuki blinked, smiled slightly, and said, Captain Kyōraku said straightforwardly, although I am not currently working for Yulingting, I was one of them and I am still willing to contribute to it. Kyōraku Shunsui stared at him, the same smile appeared on his face, and immediately said, Advertisement, if I remember correctly, there is a girl named Inoue Orihime in this world. Under the influence of Hogyoku, she has the ability to heal everything. I want her to come to Soul Society to help with the treatment. Hearing that, Urahara Kazuki hesitated for a moment, lowered his fisherman hat and his lips moved. This matter should not be a problem, I need to inform Tessai. How could Urahara Kazuki fail to hear the underlying meaning in Kyōraku Shunsui's words? You did Hogyoku, so 903 has to take care of part of the aftermath, right? But obviously, Urahara Kazuki himself thinks so, and based on his knowledge of Inoue Orihime, the other party will not refuse this request. After getting the affirmative answer from Urahara Kazuki, Kyōraku Shunsui continued to arrange follow-up work. Although he seems to be lazy on weekdays, he is still very experienced at work. The division of labor arrangement for each part of the job makes people unable to pick out the slightest hand disease. After everything was over, Yulingting's teammates started their work and left the vicinity of the crossing gate one after another. At this moment, Inouril looked at Urahara Kazuki and asked gently, Mr. Urahara, I have a question. Upon hearing this, Urahara Kazuki froze for a moment and then said. Captain Eggflower said it's okay. Yunohana Retsu gestured with her forehead and smiled and said. I heard that you have made a puppet that can contact Shimo. For this, I want to know the principle. Of course, if you can give me one, that would be the best. When the voice fell, Urahara Kazuki's forehead suddenly formed beads of sweat. Because when Yunohana Retsu finished speaking, he immediately sensed several eyes and focused on his back. Immediately, Urahara Kazuki showed a smirk on his face. This matter, Chapter 214 repeated horizontal jumps. Advertisement. Obviously, when Urahara Kazuki used the previous invention, he did not realize the seriousness of the matter. But at this moment, when he was watched by several eyes, Urahara Kazuki just came back to his senses. It seems that you miscalculated the audience of Shimo dolls? When he heard the words of the egg flower, Shimo asked with a surprised look on his face. Speaking of which, I am also very curious, Kazuki, how did you break through Aizen and my Ryotsu blockade? Shimo is obviously very clean about the difficulty of doing this. At that time, both he and Aizen in Ryotsu had already broken through the limit of shinigami and Ryotsu and reached a new dimension. It stands to reason that ordinary spiritual tools are not effective at all in front of their Ryotsu. But Urahara Kazuki has enough thousand dans should it be worthy of being the 5 special features that symbolize means. Thinking of this, Shimo looked at Urahara Kazuki's expression, as if staring at a valuable treasure. If he could, he really wanted to scratch Urahara Kazuki's head to see how these ideas came up. Upon hearing this, Urahara Kazuki looked bitter and said. This matter many eyes focused on him, as if it brought a lot of pressure to him. After a while, when the pressure from everyone increased, Urahara Kazuki finally couldn't stand it. Oh, I answer the questions one by one. Everyone's eyes are shining, looking directly at Urahara Kazuki. He eased his emotions, took off his fisherman hat, and said with a very sincere expression. In fact, the production of dolls is not very difficult. The main materials can be found in Soul Society. But there is a necessary material in it, but it cannot be easily obtained. When he said this, he paused and looked around. Seeing this, the broken bee subconsciously urged. Hurry up! A gentle smile appeared on Unohana Retsu's face, but it caused the surrounding environment to drop in temperature. Mr. Urahara, I hope you won't stop our appetite. Otherwise, I am worried that you may not be able to get out of Soul Society perfectly. Hear the words. Chill climbed up from Urahara Kazuki's tail vertebra, and followed his spine all the way to the tinling guy. Advertisement in this case, he didn't dare to delay any longer. Aw, thanks. I just said it. Urahara Kazuki touched the fisherman's hat tightly and glanced at Shimo a little seriously, with an apologetic tone in his tone. The last and most important material is Shimo-kun's Ryotsu. Hearing that, Shimo's face appeared in shock. My Ryotsu? The answer to this was really beyond Shimo's expectations. Ryotsu, essentially, is a kind of energy obtained after the spiritual power is highly compressed. In a sense, if you want to get Ryotsu, you must capture it through a special spirit tool. Because of the particularity of his own Ryotsu, Shimo did not give others his own Ryotsu. As for Shu Negli, it is within the scope of permission to conduct research on his Ryotsu. Urahara Kazuki, even more so, you guy, wouldn't you secretly hide a part of me while I was not prepared? Shimo said, half jokingly half questioning. Urahara Kazuki shook his head and explained. Shimo-kun, do you remember the Kido enchantment that used to stay in the Urahara store? Hearing this, Shimo's mind flashed what he had done. Could it be that before Shimo could finish speaking, Urahara Kazuki nodded affirmatively? Yes, I dismantled that barrier, and your Ryotsu comes from above the barrier. This was also the communication between us at that time, which soon became one of the reasons for the disconnection. The Ryotsu above the barrier seems to be different from your current Ryotsu. Hearing this, Shimo's heart suddenly felt. At that time, his Ryotsu, although very large in volume, had reached the captain level. But in terms of quality, there is a certain gap, and right now, his Ryotsu has reached another dimension. So, in a sense, these two types of Ryotsu are quite different. I see. Advertisement. Shimo nodded, no more doubts. At the same time, he also had a clear understanding of Urahara Kazuki's methods. Fang Yebak's evaluation of Urahara Kazuki is obviously correct. Able to use endless means to solve all the problems and predicaments encountered. Urahara Kazuki deserves it. Seeing that Shimo didn't blame himself for this, Urahara Kazuki was also relieved. Of course, this does not mean that he is completely safe. Mr. Urahara, can I continue to answer my question? In the voice of Eggflower Lai, a little danger has faintly emerged. First-generation Kenpachi, who no longer conceals his own breath, is also a very dangerous existence for those present. Even the injuries she had suffered when fighting with Stark hadn't fully recovered. Ahem. Urahara Kazuki almost forgot about this. If Shimo-kun can provide some Ryotsu, it's not too difficult to make a doll again. As for the production method, there is no problem. I can give it to you now. After speaking, I saw, good promise, that he pulled out a white note from his fisherman's hat, and it was filled with dense fonts. Seeing this scene, Shimo's mouth twitched slightly. This guy actually prepared the production method in advance. He raised his eyes slightly and looked directly at Urahara Kazuki. But I found the expression on the other party's face, with a little schadenfreude. Sure enough, this guy's ability to shake the pot is definitely not weaker than himself. Thinking of this, Shimo's fingers bend slightly and his space-cutting ability is activated. In the next moment, the note in Urahara Kazuki's hand was turned into countless pieces and fell from his hand. This matter, let's leave it to professionals. Shimo's mouth raised slightly, and the same smile as Urahara Kazuki appeared. I can provide Kazuki with enough Ryotsu. You can start making now. Code. Chapter 215 So-called enemies advertisement. Urahara Kazuki's old face broke for Shimo's proposal, but he couldn't refuse. Especially when being watched by several captain-level presences. Urahara Kazuki feels that if she refuses Shimo's proposal, it would be more miserable. Ever since, he proposed to go to the 12th Division. There are enough equipment to facilitate the manufacture of dolls. However, it was because Yu Lingting had just experienced the devastation. People like Kojiwali and others, whose main task is to preside over the overall situation of the squad. Therefore, it was Shimo who accompanied Urahara Kazuki to the 12th Division. On the way, Shimo-kun, Urahara Kazuki suddenly said, "Do you have nothing to say about my behavior?" There was a heavy hint in his tone. Hearing this, Shimo's mouth raised slightly and his expression was unusually relaxed. As you have discovered before, my staff has changed dramatically since before. And through the Battle of Karakura Town, I want you to know better than me. He looked at Urahara Kazuki, and a bit of seriousness appeared in his eyes. Beyond Death 903, there are not many gods and imaginary existences in the whole world, right? Urahara Kazuki's chin is closed, his right hand is rubbed on it, a bit of thinking appears in his eyes. It is precisely because of my own strength that I have no scruples. In Shimo's calm voice, there was a truth. During the battle with Aizen, he also had a more accurate positioning of his own strength. In the Soul Society right now, if the Zero Division does not appear, even Yamamoto Genryusai can't help him. There has been a certain gap between the two in terms of strength. What's more, like the attack method of Yamamoto Genryusai, Shimo has more than 10 ways to dodge. In the end, it was not him who was injured, but the Soul Society as a whole. Thinking about this, Yamamoto Genryusai knows better than him. However, the future is still long, and Shimo is not sure how the future will unfold. Urahara Kazuki put the fisherman hat on his head again, a smile appeared on his face, and said, "That's it, I see." In his opinion, Shimo was not conceited, he was just telling the truth. Advertisement at the same time, Urahara Kazuki also understood the underlying meaning of Shimo's words. I am still my previous self, and nothing will change because Aizen is sealed. For this answer, Urahara Kazuki is also relieved after all, he doesn't have enough means to check and balance Shimo right now. If there is a problem, then it is only possible to pin our hopes on the Zero Team. The 12th Division Team House, Technology Development Bureau. Oh. Urahara Kazuki looked at the building in front of him and smiled happily. It's really surprising, I didn't expect Kuretsuchi Mayuri to manage the 12th squad in such an orderly manner. Shimo glanced sideways, glanced at him somewhat unexpectedly, and said, "Kazuki, haven't you discovered that some of the team members have been transformed into explosive bombs? Meet explosive bombs, implanted in Shinigami's body with remote control fried orders, which can be controlled by the remote control. In other words, the life and death of these Shinigami are all controlled by Kuretsuchi Mayuri's thoughts." Hearing that, it was Urahara Kazuki's face that showed a different look. "Shimo-kun, don't you know, these changed Hao's dead sleeves. 90% of Yibu is the author of Chaozhong Zaichao." As the two were talking, a Shinigami team member in protective clothing hurriedly ran in front of them. When, Captain Shimo, Team Urahara, sir, the man in front of him has 3 small horns on his forehead, which looks a bit peculiar. Oh, Urahara Kazuki recognized this person, it turned out to be Aizen. Where is Yuli? This, Bia, guy won't hide, right? Hearing this, Ajin frowned, and a look of embarrassment appeared on his face. This immediately, a very uncomfortable voice came from within the Technology Development Bureau. Aizen, let them in. Kuretsuchi Mayuri's face was gloomy, standing at the gate of the team building, twisting his wrist, as if he still couldn't adapt to his body. "Oh, Captain Nei." The moment he saw Kuretsuchi Mayuri, Urahara Kazuki greeted him with a smile. Obviously, he knew that the other party didn't want to see himself, so he deliberately used this method to torture Kuretsuchi Mayuri. Sure enough, Kuretsuchi Mayuri saw Urahara Kazuki walking towards him, and said very gloomily, "If it wasn't because of Shimo-kun's presence, advertisement. I must make you my experiment." However, Urahara Kazuki took a step forward, reached out his hand to embrace Kuretsuchi Mayuri's shoulder, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. "So, do you want to use this body that has no words fully restored?" Hun Miao Li. Hearing that, Kuretsuchi Mayuri's pupils shrank suddenly and his body tightened in an instant. "When did you see it?" Urahara Kazuki tapped his shoulder twice and said, "Of course it was the first second you appeared. Although you have performed more than 3 levels of disguise, you have neglected someone's perception ability." Having said that, he slapped his mouth and motioned Kuretsuchi Mayuri to look forward. Shimo was walking slowly towards the two. At the moment you appeared, there was an abnormal change in Shimo-kun's pupils. From this, we can infer some things. Now, Kuretsuchi Mayuri no longer pretends, and its Ryatsu suddenly becomes a bit weak. That is to say, I didn't lose to you. Urahara Kazuki smiled unchanged and said with relief. "You can think so." Kuretsuchi Mayuri's face is a bit more relaxed, no longer entangled in this topic. What are you doing here at the Technology Development Bureau? Urahara Kazuki coughed slightly, straightened his face, and said. Just borrow the equipment here. Kuretsuchi Mayuri refused subconsciously, but when he saw Shimo on the side. Ahem, come on. Sometimes, for people like Kuretsuchi Mayuri, it is more useful to speak with strength. Shimo is also in the Technical Development Bureau and has re-understood Urahara Kazuki's scientific research capabilities. In a sense, he is also standing at the pinnacle of the field. After completing the 10 puppets, Urahara Kazuki's mission is temporarily completed. Shimo also left the Technical Development Bureau alone, leaving that space for the two to be alone. Next, he needs to go to the first team house. There was still a hot potato in his hand, but he never handed it over. Shimo looked at the humanoid seal in the small space, shook his head, and whispered. Aizen, are you ready for the trial of Soul Society? Chapter 216 Judgment, Advertisement in the Team House, the Captain's House. Yamamoto Genryuze was wrapped in bandages all over his body, and he lost his previous majesty. The slender white beard has been trimmed. In the slightly closed eyes, there is a hint of scrutiny from time to time. Captain Shimo, as for your proposal, the old man agrees very much. Yamamoto Yuan Lu Yinqing coughed twice, said, Ahem, the old man will go to the underground chamber with you. In addition, Jashiro and Shunsui will follow. Shimo smiled on his forehead and said, I hope Central 46 will not do something unpleasant. Yamamoto Motonyujai nodded and didn't say much. He waved his hand and motioned Chojiro Sasaki to call Kyōraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yugataki. Soon, 2 hell butterflies flew out of the first team. After a while, the 2 of them appeared in front of Shimo. Kyōraku Shunsui hasn't changed much, but Jashiro Yukataki's face is pale. Judging from his coughing from time to time, his condition does not seem to be good. However, under this situation, Jashiro Yukataki still complied with Yamamoto Genryusai's subpoena and came here. Yamamoto Genryusai looked around, nodded, and said, Now that everyone has arrived, let's go. I have notified Central 46. The 3 of them didn't say much. After looking at each other, they set off. In the underground chamber, looking at Central 46, sitting on a high platform, hiding his face. Shimo raised his mouth slightly, and shook his head with a smile. Captain Shimo, you can release Aizen Moyasuke. Several Kido people surrounded him, including the current Master Kido Chong Chai Shengji. They have prepared a Kido enchantment with more than 100 levels, just in case it appears. Shimo nodded, and stretched his fingers across the open space in front of him. With the movement of his fingers, the space in front of him was also torn open by a deep crack. Darkness surged in it. The next moment, when everyone is holding their breath, a body that can barely distinguish the human form appeared in front of everyone. Is that the villain Aizen? Such a strong seal cannot be distinguished from Ryatsu. Do we still need to strengthen the Bakudo enchantment? Let's wait and see and follow Captain Shimo's command. After seeing Shimo's Kido accomplishments, Shimoji has already regarded him as the person he respects most besides Tessai. Therefore, he just gave the command to Shimo completely. Captain Shimo, we cannot determine the identity of this person. For a long time, a certain judge on the stage uttered his own voice, and his tone did not have that kind of superiority. I have notified Central 46. The 3 of them didn't say much. After looking at each other, they set off. In the underground chamber, looking at Central 46, sitting on a high platform, hiding his face. Advertisement Shimo raised his mouth slightly, and shook his head with a smile. Captain Shimo, you can release Aizen Moyasuke. Several Kido people surrounded him, including the current Master Kido Chong Chai Shengji. They have prepared a Kido enchantment with more than 100 levels, just in case it appears. Shimo nodded, and stretched his fingers across the open space in front of him. With the movement of his fingers, the space in front of him was also torn open by a deep crack. Darkness surged in it. The next moment, when everyone is holding their breath, a body that can barely distinguish the human form appeared in front of everyone. Is that the villain Aizen? Such a strong seal cannot be distinguished from Ryatsu. Do we still need to strengthen the Bakudo enchantment? Let's wait and see and follow Captain Shimo's command. After seeing Shimo's Kido accomplishments, Shimoji has already regarded him as the person he respects most besides Tessai. Therefore, he just gave the command to Shimo completely. Captain Shimo, we cannot determine the identity of this person. For a long time, a certain judge on the stage uttered his own voice, and his tone did not have that kind of superiority. Shimo's mind moved, and he recognized the person's identity. The judge from Rukongai, the 3rd room of Kiyoshui. The reason why he was able to serve as a judge has a great relationship with Shimo. So above the words, there is a sense of respect for it. It's okay. Shimo pressed his finger on the seal and said, just untie the seal. He looked at Chai Niu-si and ordered, strengthen the Bakudo barrier, increasing the number to 3,000 levels. Shiba Shengji did not hesitate, and immediately set about the arrangement of the Bakudo enchantment. Other Kido players also joined in soon. The Bakudo barrier was increased to 3,000 levels. And Shimo also unlocked part of the seal on Aizen directly at the next moment. Taste countless broken sounds sounded in the Bakudo enchantment. On the black human-shaped seal, a gleam of light emerged. A new room 46? After a short period of hesitation, Aizen has already figured out the current situation. He did not fall into a state of madness or anger that everyone imagined. On the contrary, calm and peaceful emotions appeared on him again. Shiba Shengji will send the chair made from murderous stone to Aizen. Shimo pressed it with his backhand. Shimo-kun, let this group of carved ants come to judge me. In Aizen's tone, there was no hint of irritation. Is it your alternative counterattack? Here, Shimo said. Isn't this what you want to see? Bakudo's 99-1 banning. The 99-2 bans of Bakudo, advertisement. He directly fixed Aizen on the murderous stone chair. Seeking flowers leather strips and nails bound Aizen's arms, and huge cloth strips tied his legs firmly to the chair. During this period, he did not make any changes. The 46 room who saw this scene also seemed to let go of his heart. Judging from Ryatsu alone, it is already certain that this person is Aizen Yusuke. After all, not everyone can break through thousands of Bakudo barriers with Ryatsu. Sinner Aizen. The judge at the top hesitated for a moment, and finally spoke. Do you know your crimes? Hearing that, Aizen's exposed facial features showed a surprised look. Offense? It's ridiculous. The arrogant words instantly detonated the entire underground chamber. A man of great rebellion. To this day, how dare you be so arrogant? The old man recommends that these rebels be given the death penalty. Seconded. As everyone vented, Shimo coughed slightly and said. Sorry everyone. From the perspective of the degree of integration between Aizen and Bang Qian, the price of killing him will be Soul Society or the world's complete Jie. The hustle and bustle of the conference hall fell silent for a while. No one is going to propose this verdict, and the awkward atmosphere seems to be trapped between the 46 rooms. If this is the case, then discuss a new judgment plan. The third room of Kyōshui broke the silence and said. Immediately, room 46 began undisguised discussions. Shimo-kun, see this scene. Aizen didn't care about his judgment but asked. What do you think? One Shimo glanced at him lightly and said. As you think in your heart. Soon, Aizen's verdict was decided. Judgment, announce. The voice of one of the judges spread throughout the chamber. The captain of the first 5 division, Aizen Kuyusuke. Frozen in the 8th prison at the bottom of the underground prison, Wu Jian, executed 18,800 years of imprisonment. Hearing that, Aizen didn't react at all, his eyes drooping slightly, and he whispered. That's it, will you judge me? It's ridiculous, 0? Chapter 217 Embarrassed, Yamamoto Genryusai's transmission. Advertisement Aizen's ultimate provocative words once again detonated the atmosphere in the entire chamber. Many sages clamored to make them pay. Some people even suggested that even if a world is eliminated, Aizen should be completely dead. Naturally, no one would agree with such thoughtless remarks. Shimo is even more disappointed with these so-called 46 rooms. In his opinion, these guys may not be as curly, a man of great rebellion. Finally, one of the judges shouted, spare your life and dare to speak badly. Tie his eyes and mouth together and extend his sentence to 10,000 years. Hearing this, Aizen was unmoved, his eyes drooping slightly, and he scanned the 46 room in front of him. And when he met these so-called sages and judges, they all subconsciously retreated toward the seat behind him. They only realized that they were in the underground chamber when they came into contact with the cold backrest of some 9 molds and 7. As a sage and a judge, there shouldn't be this kind of fear of people in the audience. Even if the opponent is Aizen, it's the same. With this kind of thought, their confidence is again sufficient. However, before they could speak, they heard Aizen's calm voice, which spread throughout the chamber. Does the false strength raise the inner fear? Essentially, there is still the same number of insects. The voice fell, and a lavender light flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, more than 1,000 Bakudo barriers collapsed instantly. Aizen's Ryatsu covered the entire underground chamber in an instant. Yuan Qian's fear of death instantly encroached on the heart of room 46. Under the urging of such emotions, these guys are full of ugliness, tears rushing out of the lacrimal glands uncontrollably, like a deluge of flood, wanton nasal mucus slips from their faces. Some people even couldn't control their hands and feet, and subconsciously pushed off the baffle in front of them, exposing their ugliness to Shimo and others. Shimo-kun. Aizen raised his mouth slightly and said softly, these stupid guys are the objects of your loyalty. Do you feel sad about this? Hearing that, Shimo's eyes revealed a bit of forgiveness, and he asked. Aizen. When did you create the illusion that I was loyal to these guys? Aizen's expression was stagnant, and the arc of the corner of his mouth was immediately pulled up, saying. Is that so? I see the chaos in the chamber was quickly resolved by Yamamoto and others. Advertisement after re-isolating Aizen's Ryatsu, room 46 is also free from the fear of dying. After returning to normal, they seem to be unable to carry on the judgment again. And Aizen was also sent to the Great Hell after the execution of the judgment. It is left to go day 13, which is the two messes of Yulingting and the world. Nearly half of the team members were sent directly to the world to repair the city. Because at the end of the battle, Kokocho merged with the ruins, which also caused a lot of human casualties. In addition, the ruined city needs to be completely cleared out. For Lingting, this is also a big project. In addition, the 4th division is also overcrowded. Shimo occasionally goes to help treat two shinigami who look pleasing to the eye, and finds something to do for himself. Don't ask in the 3rd day after the verdict of Aizen is over. He received a call from a team of hell butterflies. Go to the first team building. Did something happen again? Shimo shook his head, turned and left from the 3rd division team house. First team house. Idiot. The voice full of air, from a long distance in the court, echoed within the range of the first team. Shinigami walked around in a hurry, and after hearing this sound, he speeded up his pace. Shimo stepped into the imperial court and just heard the reprimand. You 3 guys lost Captain Haori? Yamamoto Genryusai sounded like a bell. It's fine if it is damaged in the battle. It's too shameful to lose it. Look at your leisurely look now, it's really worrying. In front of him, 3 guys with extremely different heights are standing in a row. Captain, you can rest assured that I will take care of such a cheap Haori. Kuchiki lowered his eyes and said calmly. Boom! Yamamoto was furious and hammered the ground with his cane. Who is worried about that? Besides, it's not a bargain, you idiot. He looked at the 3 people in front of him, his voice raised a few degrees again. Listen to me, do you think it's okay to win the battle? What do you think Captain Haori is? Advertisement. Zaraki Kenpachi raised his chin slightly, a look of disdain flashed in his one eye, and said. Trouble? Byakuya Kuchiki looked affirmative, and his tone was also very affirmative, saying. Cheap. As for the final expression of Hitsugaya Dashiro, it was a bit nervous. It should be a symbol of the captain's majesty in his tone, there was a bit of uncertainty. Hearing Hitsugaya's words, Yamamoto Genryusai's expression only eased slightly. 2 idiots. When I look at Zaraki Kenpachi and Byakuya Kuchiki, the tone is still full of the meaning of hating iron but not steel. The energy of the captain is the same as before. Shimo sighed, breaking the current atmosphere. Shimo. Captain Shimo. Oh, the 3 greeted Shimo in their own way. The moment Yamamoto Genryusai saw Shimo, his expression eased a lot again. As the biggest hero of Karakura's Stair War, Shimo's significance has surpassed more than 90% of the captains. Although the previous remarks in the underground chamber did not avoid them. But Yamamoto Motoyanagi didn't take this to heart. 0.0 In fact, it's not just Shimo, there are not a few captains who are dissatisfied with Central 46. After your treatment, the old man has returned to normal. Yamamoto Genryusai's mood seemed to have eased. Shimo didn't have any greetings on this, he asked directly. Captain, you sent me to come over, is there anything important? I didn't lose Captain Haori. Hearing this, Yamamoto Genryusai's expression was stagnant, and his speech was lost for a while. Ahem, Shimo. Actually, when I call you over, there is something I want to discuss with you. Shimo raised his brows and said with a smile, the captain said so straightforwardly. Yamamoto Uenyanagi's expression gradually became solemn, and his voice was somewhat hoarse. Captain Shimo, 3rd Division, what do you think about the position of captain? Chapter 218 Shimo's Thoughts, the Missing College Student. Advertisement, ahem. When he heard what Yamamoto Genryusai said, Shimo almost didn't get choked to death by his saliva. Captain, how come you have such a problem all of a sudden? You are not thinking about putting this position. Before he could finish his words, Yamamoto Genryusai nodded naturally. That's right. The old man has this idea. Shimo felt like a series of question marks appeared on his face. What is this operation? Why does Yamamoto Genryusai have such a dangerous idea? The important task of being a captain almost made him breathless, and now he is actually asked to serve as the captain. This is simply to force people to rebel against Soul Society. Sorry. Shimo arched his hands, I can't be. Farewell. As he said, he turned and left without hesitation. Joke. As a mascot in the 3rd Division, 14 is already his limit. Captain Gote 13? Don't even think about it, ahem. Yamamoto Motoyanagi concealed his embarrassment with a cough and stopped Shimo. It's just a negotiation. The old man is energetic now, but he has no plans to retire. Hearing that, Shimo just withdrew from the footsteps of the court and returned to the front of the 4. However, I still want to ask. Yamamoto Genryusai opened his eyes slightly, looked at Shimo, and said. What do you think about the position of captain? Shimo pondered for a moment, then replied after Yamamoto Motoyanagi stared for a moment, a look of doubt appeared on his heavily wrinkled face. It's gone? Shimo nodded and said, yes, advertisement. Could it be that the captain still wants me to make a statement of several thousand words? The air became very quiet for a while. Kuchiki Zia and Hitsugaya Dashiro suppressed their smiles, trying not to let Yamamoto Genryusai notice. Otherwise, they worry that they may not be able to get out of the first team house intact. For a long time, Yamamoto Genryusai sighed, with a somewhat helpless tone in his tone. Chew. I see, Skip this topic. Yamamoto Genryusai paused and continued. Next, it's about Arrancar and Hueco Mundo. Hearing that, Shimo corrects the color, and no longer responds with a laughing posture. He understands that Emperor Yamamoto will definitely mention this. Letting go of Harribel's thing, say it's big or not, say it's not small. As for whether there is dereliction of duty and guilt, it all depends on Yamamoto Genryusai. At this moment, Kyōraku Shunsui walked in from outside the palace. He still looked lazy, but there was a trace of fatigue between his brows and eyes. Obviously, the repair work during this period put him under certain pressure. Yo, old man Shimo. The way Kyōraku Shunsui greets is always so different. Yamamoto nodded, and after a gesture, he looked back at Shimo. It just so happened that Shunsui was also here, and the old man asked directly. For you to let go of the third espada, Tia Harribel, this matter. How do you want to be held accountable? Hearing that, Shimo raised his brows and an unexpected look appeared on his face. How do I hope I will be held accountable? Yamamoto Genyanagi lowered his eyes, his voice was low, and he said in a low voice. Although the old man is a bit corrupt, it does not mean that he is completely ignorant of flexibility. I may be able to guess some of your thoughts. It is not intended to do something that is unfavorable to Soul Society or the present world like Aizen. However, the matter of you letting Arrancar go, Yulingting needs an explanation. Hearing this, Shimo's heart suddenly became clear. This is for him to cooperate and fool others together. Well, Shimo thought slightly and said, because of the injury in the battle, the strength has fallen. Advertisement, so how about making those Arrancars escape from me? Yamamoto Genryusai's forehead faintly has blue veins beating. But soon, after taking a few deep breaths, he temporarily suppressed the emotions in his heart. I won't ask you this kind of question again in the future. But the old man still hopes that you can tell me what you think in your heart. Shimo's forehead chuckled lightly. It should be. Harribel, as the only espada in Arrancar, is among the best in Hueco Mundo. If she supervises Hueco Mundo for us, I think it will save a lot of trouble. Emperor Yamamoto was silent. A trace of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Harribel, when Hitsugaya Deshiro heard this name, the expression on his face was obviously different. He had fought with it after the solution. In his opinion, he himself has already exerted his strength to a level of 120%. However, in front of Harribel, 907 was unable to fight back. After the opponent returned to the blade, the strength of the two no longer belonged to the same dimension. After the transformation of Hogyoku, Harribel has completely surpassed the current Hitsugaya Deshiro. I hope things are as you think, Yamamoto said with his eyes downcast. Shimo, who walked out of the first team building, did not experience any psychological fluctuations due to Yamamoto Genyanagi's words. Regarding the release of Harribel, he would not care about the opinions of others. Harribel was originally prepared to prepare for a new war in the future. On the way back to the 3rd Division, Shimo accidentally saw a petite figure. Lined with a black death tyrant, the white Captain Howery tightened his waist, making his body look very exquisite. Shimo. The broken bee has obviously been weighing on this must-have path for some time. I have already investigated some of the things you told me before. Shimo walked up to him and said softly, you mean? Before he could finish his words, he was preempted by the somewhat impatient broken bee. In the Spiritual Arts Academy, the student named Xian Guo disappeared. Chapter 219 Longtang Temple Clan Advertisement. According to the investigation of the Covert Mobile Unit, Broken Bee's lips lightly touched, his face showed a solemn expression. The college student named Xian Guo completely lost his trace during the life soul burial practice. The soul burial internship is not 100% safe. According to the data provided by the Spiritual Academy, the soul burial internship will kill several students every year. Shimo listened quietly, as the captain of the 3rd Division who acts as a mascot. He is almost completely unaware of doing this. However, the giant Manos Grande encountered by Rukia and others is very rare. Of course, there was Aizen's plan in this matter. Therefore, it cannot be regarded as a normal situation. In addition, the casualty rate of soul burial practice is relatively high. So Akane's disappearance did not attract too many people's attention. In terms of the Spiritual Academy, it's just a commoner of Rukongai. Don't be too obsessed. If it hadn't been for Shimo's warning of Shattered Bee before, it is estimated that the Covert Mobile Unit would not have noticed this. It is strange. Broken Bee glanced at Shimo and continued, we can't find any existence related to Akane J. Whether it is her relatives or her friends. Not only that, but I also found something more weird. The members of the hidden mobile unit who went to investigate in this world seem to be gradually losing relevant memories. After hearing this, Shimo frowned slightly, and he was even more concerned about the matter. When he was in contact with the girl named Akane Mao, he didn't notice anything unusual in her. At that time, the other party was just a normal shinigami. Although there is a bit of kendo talent, it is not enough to attract too much attention. Oh, by the way, how is the Longtang Temple clan? Related messages flashed in Shimo's mind and suddenly asked. Broken Bee froze, rubbing his fingers on his chin, thinking. The inferior aristocratic family of Longtang Temple? I didn't get any information about this clan. Since its main clan was sentenced to exile by Central 46, the remaining clan has been very honest. Advertisement: as the captain of the 2nd Division, Broken Bee Hall controls the entire hidden mobile unit, and has a good understanding of the noble information in the Yuling court. What's more, she herself came from the inferior aristocratic Bee family. The identity and status of the Longtang Temple clan is not much different from that of the Feng family. On weekdays, there will be certain contacts. Shimo nodded, the doubts in his heart disappeared a lot. Because, in his memory, the things about Qian were actually dominated by the exiled Longtang Temple clan. Hundreds of years ago, the family of Longtang Temple was exiled directly because of being conspired by others, and their people could only live in the Broken Realm. However, in Shimo's memory, the Longtang Temple clan is still in the gathering place of nobles, and is still a member of the nobles of the Wandering Palace. It turned out that those who were exiled were the main clan, and those who were left were the sub-clan. However, according to the words of Broken Bee, the so-called sub-clan does not have the idea of saving the main clan at all. Perhaps in their opinion, the death of these main clan is over, and they are the real Longtang Temple clan. During this period of time, led to Yuli's stare at Dianjiji. Shimo exhorted and didn't take it too seriously. The world is so big that there are too many places to hide a person. It's okay to ask him to fight, and if you find someone, it's really not within his ability. It's safer to leave this matter to professionals. Broken Bee nodded and didn't ask much. But her expression seems to be something she hasn't finished. Hesitate to speak and stop. Shimo noticed the change in her expression and said in doubt. Smashed Bee, is there anything else for you? Upon hearing this, there was a rare twist on the face of Broken Bee. Actually, there is one more thing. Before Shimo could speak, Shattered Bee took out an item from his own howry. A doll the size of an adult's palm. This doll is lined with a black Death Tyrant outfit and draped on the outside with the color Captain Howry. The character 3 on it is very obvious. Compared to the contact puppet used by Urahara Kazuki before, this one is obviously much more refined. This is also Urahara Kazuki's 2nd generation work. At that time, after the completion of the 12th squad, it was sent to the various squads by the team members. Advertisement: 2nd Division, 3rd Division, 4th Division, and 13th Division. And in the hands of Broken Bee, it seemed to be one of them. The guy Urahara Kazuki mentioned in the accompanying letter that this doll has added the ability to store Ryotsu. As he spoke, the voice of Broken Bee gradually fainted, and its cheeks gradually became red. I want Shimo to help you save some Ryotsu. Faced with Broken Bee's request, Shimo did not refuse. But his expression is also a bit weird. Especially after taking over the doll, the feeling of holding a doll that looks like you is really a bit subtle. After Ryotsu instilled into it, the Zanpakutō on the doll's waist also glowed slightly. Shimo could vaguely perceive the weak connection between this doll and himself. Through this doll, others can directly cross the isolation of space and Ryotsu and communicate with themselves. And the key to chanting Shunji is his Ryotsu. Ever since, Shimo began to think about another thing. Is this the ability that Ryotsu possesses after breaking through the dimension of Shinigami and the virtual, or is it because of the alternative evolution of the spatial ability he controls? It seems that it is necessary to discuss related matters with Nuo's Zhao, Kazuki. Thank you so much. Broken Bee took the doll again, stuttering a bit of thanks. However, this scene fell in Shimo's eyes, but it made him a little bit dumbfounded. By the way, the doll in your hand is just like me. Also, don't stuff it in strange places. After putting away the doll, Broken Bee hurriedly said goodbye. Perhaps she also noticed that there was a certain problem with her operation. But her appearance also reminded Shimo. Although Aizen has been sealed by himself for the time being. But this does not mean that everything has fallen into peace. There is a new war waiting for him in the future. Shimo looked towards the sky above the palace, his eyes gradually deepened. There is nothing, but it seems to be the center of the Soul Society. Chapter 220 Misunderstanding in Room 46 Advertisement. Regarding the hidden dangers that may exist in the Longtang Temple clan, Shimo felt that it was necessary to stifle the danger in the bud. Ever since, he took advantage of his free time to go to the residence of the Longtang Temple family alone. As the main clan of the Kyōraku family, Shimo also served as the captain of the 3rd Division. His status among the nobles is no longer inferior to the so-called 4 nobles. Therefore, facing Shimo's arrival, the Longtang Temple clan took an extremely humble and respectful attitude. And when Shimo asked to check the historical records of their family, he was not even hindered by the slightest bit of sun. The current Ryudo Temple family personally handed the clan records to Shimo. Shimo frowned and read everything recorded in it. However, he didn't get what he wanted. He shook his head, then smiled and returned the clan to the Longtang Temple family. The attitude of the other party is very cooperative, and he has no guilty to embarrass others. Don't hit the smiley people even when you reach out. What's more, does the Longtang Temple family have such an attitude? After not getting what he wanted, a new idea came up in Shimo's heart. Since the current Longtang Temple family is responsible, you might as well search from the more distant 910 history. It looks like I have to go to the underground chamber. After Shimo made up his mind, he left the Longtang Temple house and headed straight for the underground chamber. The patriarch of Longtang Temple looked at the direction he was leaving with a lingering fear, and wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead quietly. Just being with him face to face gives me such a strong pressure. It seems that the news circulating in the Lingting hasn't been faked. Captain Shimo has really reached the level of captain. He shook his head, a look of fear appeared on his face, and there was a hint of trembling in his voice. What a terrible young man. Underground chamber. It didn't take too long to arrive here when he launched a high-speed step. As usual, not much has changed here, only the team members responsible for guarding have been reduced a lot. Advertisement: the chief culprit in the Battle of Koromachi has been convicted in the Great Hell. Bia. The vigilance in room 46 has relaxed a lot. Shimo passed through the barrier he had set up for the underground chamber, opened the curtain in front of him, and formally stepped into it. For a time, all eyes were focused on him, captain of the 3rd Division, Kyōraku Shimo? Someone recognized Shimo the first time. The next moment, the chamber fell into a long-lost silence. Regarding the existence that changed the outcome of the Karakura Town battle, the emotions in the 46 chamber's heart are still extremely complicated. At the time of Aizen's trial, they had already realized the importance of being powerful. The fear of dying, no one in the room is willing to bear it again. Aizen is already so strong, so what kind of strength will Kyōraku Shimo, who sealed it, have? After a moment of silence in the chamber, the judge above finally spoke. Captain Shimo, I don't know if you were here, but is there anything important? Facing Shimo, even as a judge, he still can't completely control his emotions. Hearing this, Shimo raised his gaze, looked at the upper seat, and said, because I need to examine some historical texts, I need the qualifications to go to the Great Lingshu Corridor. The understatement seems to be telling the most common thing. However, the importance of the Great Lingshu Corridor is an irreplaceable existence for Yulingting and the Soul Society as a whole. It has nothing to do with Shinigami's end, it compulsorily collects and records all things and information in Soul Society since history. Shimo went to it this time not just to find out about the history of Ryutenji's house. There is another purpose. Will his own existence be included in the Great Lingshu Gallery? How detailed will the relevant information be? Shimo's voice fell, and the chamber fell silent again. Behind the baffle, the complexion of the 46 chambers was so suffocated that they could hardly be suppressed. Joke. Is the Great Spirit Book Corridor that a captain can enter if he wants to enter? Even the head of the Godei 13, Yamamoto Motonyasasai Shigekuni, needs to be reviewed before being able to enter it. Advertisement looking at Shimo's appearance, as if saying, I'm here to inform you. In this regard, these 46 rooms, which have always been aloof, almost ran out of emotions. They are Central 46, the highest judicial institution in Soul Society, and they are in charge of countless Shinigami's destinies. They who are aloof, have they ever experienced such treatment? When the 46 room of this term took over, it had already sensed that this would happen in the future. When someone takes the initiative to challenge authority and succeeds, the so-called authority no longer holds its former status. Aizen's appointment as Central 46 clearly stepped on the foot of the supreme judicial authority of Soul Society. He proved to the world with his actions. Power is nothing more than a cunning fox in tiger skin. Strength is the only one. This matter the 3rd room of the Judge Kiyoshui took the lead and said, the old man thinks it can pass. As soon as this remark came out, some people were immediately opposed. Inquisitor Kiyoshui, this is not in compliance with the procedure. Although Captain Shimo contributed a lot, he was not able to challenge Soul Society's laws and regulations. We exist only to maintain laws and regulations. As the number of people who spoke up gradually increased, a look of helplessness appeared on Shu Shui Sanchi's face. Why don't these people understand what I think? Do you really think I am helping Captain Shimo? Everyone, have you misunderstood something? Shimo's sudden speech interrupted everyone's argument. The argument stopped abruptly. I am not here to get your consent. Shimo looked calm and said indifferently, this is just a notice. Order. Chapter 221 Great Lingshu Corridor Advertisement. At the moment Shimo's voice fell, the complexion of room 46 had already turned into an iron blue. As the supreme judicial organ of Soul Society, how has it ever been treated like this? Not only that, even if they hadn't been treated like this before serving as Central 46. The guy in front of me is too big. Central 46 gritted his teeth and waited for Shimo to be tortured on the spot. However, this kind of thinking is only daring to think about it in his heart. If I was about to say it, I was forced to publish it, but I don't know who it is. Okay, give me the pass. Shimo didn't give any meaning to the face, so he asked for it directly. This attitude has made a lot of lamentations from the top. In their view, this is a request that cannot be refused. Even the Great Spirit Book Corridor occupies an extremely important position in the Soul Society. After a while, the 3rd chamber of Chu Shui spoke as a representative, Captain Shimo, stay safe. We are now issuing a pass for the Great Lingshu Corridor. Compared with other judges and sages, Shu Shui's 3 chambers mentality is the most peaceful. He did not take this matter too seriously. Similarly, the existence of Rukongai's background is obviously more outstanding in the endurance of such things. At the beginning of this matter, he stood from the perspective of a bystander to observe the matter. Chu Shui Sanchi knew very well that when Shimo made this request, the pattern of Soul Society has undergone earth-shaking changes. The stable position of Central 46 has been completely shaken. Shimo's forehead did not say anything. Soon, the pass was delivered to him. Leaving the underground chamber, Shimo went straight to the Great Lingshu corridor. After passing through the layers of protection and the Kido enchantment, Shimo officially came to the front of the Great Spirit Book corridor. The front is full because of the Central 46 special permit. Shimo was unimpeded all the way, and no accidents happened. Advertisement. After passing through the last complex Kido enchantment, he finally entered it. The slight sense of interference from Ryotsu acted on Shimo's body, making his expression appear a bit unexpected. The Kido enchantment here seems a little different. Shimo turned around and looked at the distribution of Ryotsu and Kido spells on it. With his level of strength, he can still be affected, which has to be said to be a very miraculous thing. It looks like it's not just the Kido enchantment. A space inscribed with special rules? Shimo's gaze burst out with a bright light like a galaxy. Entering the eye, the bookshelves like a circular corridor hovered up, endless. According to the age division, almost everything is recorded in it. In the entire Soul Society, there seems to be no one thing that can escape the record of the Great Spirit Book corridor. Shimo searched through the ages and checked the relevant records of the Longtang Temple plan. At the same time, it is also certain that the other party was not framed and exiled as he remembered. At the beginning, the patriarch of Longtang Temple's main clan had violent conflicts with other nobles because of power disputes. And this is the real reason for his exile. In the struggle for power, no party is innocent. Shimo shook his head, and no longer had any sympathy for the Longtang Temple clan. In addition, he also obtained the specific location of his exile from it. Entrance number 69 of Dianji? Putting the related books back into it, Shimo began to look for information related to him. There are among the closest eras. A book with a black cover has the 4 characters Kyōraku Shimo written on it. Shimo didn't hesitate, just opened it to check, but within a few minutes, he roughly scanned the contents. After reading it, his expression looked a little weird. Is this the so-called Great Lingshu corridor? The record on it, in Shimo's view, is pure nonsense. Throughout this article, almost nothing is true and effective. The ability of the system? Seeking flowers advertisement? Shimo thought to himself, or is it related to sparse eyes? Zanpakutō was originally the power of Shinigami's soul, and Shinigami's own. And Shimo's Zanpakutō is even more related to the high power of time. Its particularity is unmatched by other Zanpakutō. You know, even if you have defeated Aizen and successfully sealed it, Shimo still couldn't reach the conditions for the solution. Whenever he recalled the endless ladder of time in the Zanpakutō space, there were always waves of powerlessness in his heart. As for the system, it is a dimensional existence far beyond this world. But no matter what it is, Shimo can rest assured at this point, he can already conclude that the Great Spirit Book corridor is invalid for him. Its recorded ability can only record some trivial things. In addition, he also discovered an interesting thing. The books that record everything about him are relatively depreciated compared to the surrounding books. Is it frequently read by people? Shimo said to himself. Aizen, Yamamoto Genryusai, Central 46. He quickly identified a few candidates who might read the book. It seems that I am very concerned. Shimo didn't take it to heart. The above record, let alone him, it is estimated that even the Central 46, which has an IQ like a curly hair, will not easily believe it. Putting the book back to its original position, Shimo left the Great Spirit Book corridor. However, when he arrived outside the underground chamber, he saw Kyōraku Shunsui waiting outside the inner court. The familiar pink haori is really conspicuous. Shimo. Kyōraku Shunsui seems to have been waiting here for a long time. A look of doubt appeared on Shimo's face and asked, "Is there anything to erect?" Hearing that, Kyōraku Shunsui had a serious expression on his face, nodded, and said, "It is indeed a very important matter, come with me. The old man Shan has been waiting in the team house for a long time." 0 Chapter 222 0 Division. Advertisement First Team House. Yamamoto Genryusai hung his cane, his eyes lightened, as if he had been waiting for a long time. On the vermilion tea table, there was hot tea, and the air was filled with a faint fragrance of tea. "Old man Shan, I brought Shimo." Kyōraku Shunsui greeted broadly. Immediately, he stepped forward and sat cross-legged across the tea table. When Shimo saw this, he followed and sat beside Kyōraku Shunsui. But he has a lot of doubts in his heart right now. Soul Society and this world are very stable. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Saiwei's eyes opened, and a dignified color appeared in his eyes. "Calling you over this time is a very important thing." Shimo didn't give a word, and waited quietly for the other party's text. Upon seeing 910, Yamamoto Genryusai continued. "As a member of the Kyōraku family, you should know the history of Soul Society well, right?" Hearing this, Shimo said on his forehead, except for a few secret things, everything else should be clear. Not only as a member of the Kyōraku family, Shimo is also a traveler, whose understanding of the shinigami world is far beyond the average nobleman. However, in the books of the previous life, it is not possible to summarize every detail in detail, so Shimo will say that he also has things that he does not know. Yamamoto Uenagi's eyes drooped slightly, and he looked at Shimo and said, "Then, you must know the Royal Secret Agent Zero Division." Shimo was slightly startled when he heard this name. Zero Division? Are there any special teams over Gode 13? Shimo is still very clear about the information of the Zero Division. It is a special team that is completely free from the wisdom of Central 46 and is directly assigned to the royal family. It is a higher level than Gode 13. There are 5 members, all of whom are team captains. Not only that, but the even more terrifying combat power of these 5 people has surpassed the entire Gode 13. Of course, to exclude the special existence, advertisement. For example, some guys who can hang up at any time. On weekdays, the Zero Division lives in the various branches of the Spirit King Palace and serves as the important task of guarding the Spirit King. Moreover, their task is only one, and that is to guard the Spirit King. Unless they encounter a crisis that is enough to destroy the Lingting, they will leave the Lingting Palace by riding on the Tianju-Chu and descend into the Lingting. It can be said that these 5 people are the most mysterious and powerful organization in Soul Society, far surpassing the existence of other troops in Yu Lingting. For example, Shimo, if he only has the identity of the captain, then he will certainly not know the existence of the Zero Division. The status of the superior nobles is even more important than the status of the captain in some cases. Lingting, after all, is still a place of strict hierarchy. Shimo was somewhat surprised by Yamamoto Genryusai's words. The position of the Zero Division is Chongren and will not easily get in touch with Gode 13. Yamamoto Genryusai will not easily mention related matters in the Yulingting. This time, there must be a very important thing. It seems you are very clear. Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes drooped slightly, his voice was a bit solemn. On the day before yesterday, when the morning sun was rising, the Zero Division sent a message to the First Division. The content is related to you. Hearing this, Shimo's breathing was slightly stagnant, and he was taken aback for a moment. In this regard, he was a little surprised. The Zero Division has nothing to do with you. Is it related to Aizen? Or is it related to Shun? For a time, Shimo's mind was full of thoughts, a little complicated. Yamamoto Motonujai noticed this scene and waited for a while before continuing to speak. The message mentioned something related to your future destiny. Shimo had calmed down at this time, his eyes lowered, and he was quietly waiting for Yamamoto Genryusai to follow. Here is the specific content of the message. Yamamoto Uenagi stretched out the wrinkles and scars of Chido, discussing in the air. Kido shines, constructing words in the sky. Our Zero Team, the Guardian King, must seek geniuses in the Soul Society. After the Battle of Karakura Stair, I gave this order in the name of the Spirit King. Advertisement, Kyōraku Shimo, captain of Team 3, will be promoted to Team 0. After the 3 breaths, Kido's light dissipated, and the words also turned into spirits, dissipating in the air. Scanning the contents carefully, Shimo frowned deeply. The development of the matter really exceeded his expectations. It stands to reason that if you want to be promoted to the Zero Division, you must create something in the Soul Society and be recognized by the Spirit King as a person of Soul Society history, before you can be promoted to the Zero Division. Officially, because of the harsh conditions to Ultimate, only 5 members of the Zero Team. The last one who was promoted was the former captain of the 12th Division, Hakishu Kiryu. She developed the technology to put temporary soul into the body, laying the foundation for the subsequent development of Yihanwen. After that, he was recruited by the Zero Division and was successfully promoted to one of them. If nothing else, the Gode 13 captain Yamamoto Uenagi also has the qualifications for promotion. This is Shimo's guess and an inference based on the actual situation. But he didn't guess that the Zero Team would invite himself to be promoted so quickly. For him, there are no secrets in the Zero Division. Compared with the privileges they get, what the Zero Team members need to pay is a bit more than the gains. Simply being unable to leave the Spirit Palace at will is enough for Shimo to refuse the other party's invitation. 0.0 There was silence in the team house. Whether it's Yamamoto Genryusai or Kyōraku Shunsui, but keep your eyes on Shimo, waiting for his answer. Unlike Yamamoto Genryusai, Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes showed a hint of worry. As Shimo's family, he didn't want to see Shimo leave Yulingting. His thoughts were silent. Shimo thought quietly. After a while, his gaze lifted slightly, and there were thousands of stars flashing through it, shining Madara. Just when he was about to refuse the article, the sudden appearance of a voice suffocated his words that had reached his lips. The final check-in task is being released. Task content. Please check in and sign in at the Spirit Palace. Close black lens bracket. Quest reward. Zanpakutō solution. Chapter 223 Royal Agents Coming. Advertisement the next morning, when the first ray of morning glowwine was in the palace. Shimo and others are already waiting in the open space north of the first team house. Around, the team leader of Gode 13, headed by Yamamoto Genryusai, all gathered here. They are still very much looking forward to what will happen next. After all, the mysterious Zero Division, in the eyes of some captains, is really a bit curious. Shimo. Kyōraku Shunsui stood still boasting. The voice is a bit deep. By the way, don't you really think about becoming a member of the Zero Division? Dharma is going to do the existence above the entire Ling Ting Ah. Hearing this, Shimo looked sideways and looked at Kyōraku Shunsui very seriously. Although the two are different in generation, Kyōraku Shunsui respects his decision no matter when. More often, the two are more like close friends. Stupid Ogi-san. Shimo sighed softly and said, do you think I will always live in an environment? Guarding the 14th King of Spirit, hey, it seems to be a rigorous task. Actually, isn't it still imprisoned in the so-called Spirit Palace? Kyōraku Shunsui glanced at the location of Yamamoto Genryusai, paused for a moment, then moved to the sky. I will respect your choice. Shimo's forehead, his eyes drooping slightly, he swept around, but he found a lot of eyes focused on him. Obviously, they guessed a little. At this moment, there was a change in the sky. The turbulent sound disperses the clouds. Shimo raised his eyes and narrowed his eyes slightly. The scene before him is somewhat familiar to him. This is the scene when the city wall surrounding Pinding descends from the sky. Boom. The large Tianju lifted down from the sky and hit the ground, raising a lot of dust, blocking everyone's sight. Jashiro Yukitaki stretched out his hand and whispered. One of Hado rushed. The turbulent Ryatsu impacted on the flying dust, sweeping away the dust in an instant. Tianju Chu, like a coffin, opens in the middle to the sides. It's still a push-pull. Shimo's mouth raised slightly, waiting for the Zero team to enter the field. Hey, 5 people walked slowly out of it and greeted Gode 13. It's coming, it's coming, it's finally here, Master Zero is here. The middle-aged man with a straw nose in his mouth, facing the captains of Gode 13 in an extremely exaggerated tone. Long time no see, Gode 13 kids. Do you have a good meal and sleep? Advertisement, are you still alive? Looking at the Zero team in front of them, the captains looked very surprised. The image of these guys is far from what they imagined. How come out a group? Hitsugaya Dashiro was more polite, and did not say what was in his heart. It's a pity. The slightly obese woman said with a pity, I didn't see them in Shao Nishi. The man in the airplane head suddenly approached, came in front of the crowd, tilted his head, his expression became a little bit ugly. It's been a long time, Mao Jawa. How about it, did you use the healing technique I taught you back then to heal others? Yunohana Retsu's eyes are low, and his attitude is as gentle as ever. Certainly. When the voice fell, I saw the plane's nose raised high and said with disdain. Really? But why'd I see that there are still so many wounded here? What are these? Before he finished speaking, he saw a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Kirin Temple Tenshiro. Shimo's tone was somewhat indifferent. As a member of the Zero Division, is that the attitude? The moment he saw the figure in front of him, Kyōraku Temple Tianshilong raised his brows, and the straw in his mouth made a creaking sound. Kyōraku Shimo? Do you have a good meal and sleep? Are you still alive? Looking at the Zero team in front of them, the captains looked very surprised. The image of these guys is far from what they imagined. How come out a group? Hitsugaya Dashiro was more polite, and did not say what was in his heart. It's a pity. The slightly obese woman said with a pity, I didn't see them in Shao Nishi. The man in the airplane head suddenly approached, came in front of the crowd, tilted his head, his expression became a little bit ugly. It's been a long time, Mao Jawa. How about it, did you use the healing technique I taught you back then to heal others? Yunohana Retsu's eyes are low, and his attitude is as gentle as ever. Certainly. When the voice fell, I saw the plane's nose raised high and said with disdain. Really? But why'd I see that there are still so many wounded here? What are these? Before he finished speaking, he saw a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Kirin Temple Tenshiro. Advertisement. Shimo's tone was somewhat indifferent. As a member of the Zero Division, is that the attitude? The moment he saw the figure in front of him, Kyōraku Temple Tianshilong raised his brows, and the straw in his mouth made a creaking sound. Kyōraku Shimo? There was a suspicion in his tone. Shimo gestured on his forehead, saying, while soliciting others, don't you even know the information in advance? So it seems. The professional qualities of the Shifan team are really limited. Hearing this, Shanglin Temple Tenshiro's eyes were round, and he looked at Shimo anxiously, just as he was about to speak back. A big hand suddenly appeared, wrapped around his shoulder. Forget it, after all, it was a long-term reunion, he was just a bit impatient in character. Seeing the burly figure who suddenly appeared next to Kyōraku Temple Tenshiro, Shimo narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked at the opponent very seriously. Monk Eye, Ichibei Hayasobi, the leader of the Zero Division, is also one of the 5 special features. Compared to his strength, Shimo cares more about the person's wisdom. Smart people are often more difficult to deal with than fools. Monk Shimo said softly, my proposal, you should be clean. Ichibei Hayasobi grinned and said with a big smile. Haha, clear. Lingwang Palace welcomes you to visit. However, I hope you can give an accurate answer as soon as possible. Shimo's forehead chuckled lightly. This is natural. After I visit the Lingwang Palace, I will naturally give you a satisfactory answer. 910 After a conversation, the surrounding captains were all in a state of shock. Plus, join the Zero Division? Is this the purpose of the Zero Division? Unexpectedly, it makes sense. Shimo After the shock, different people showed different attitudes. The most prominent expression on the faces of Uziwali and others is that they are reluctant to give up. As one of the most qualified captains, she knows the price of joining the Zero Division. When Ichibei Hayasabi heard the words, a kind smile appeared on his face. Although this expression is very contrary to his own posture. In that case, let's go to Shiba's house together. We have to borrow the Huahe cannon there too. Chapter 224 The final solution takes a long time. Advertisement The familiar Huahe cannon appeared in front of everyone again. Seeing everyone operating on the turret, Shimo's mouth twitched slightly. Although I had already prepared in my heart, when I remembered the almost invincible Team Zero, I could only return to the Spirit Palace by launching artillery shells. It is really an indescribable sense of contrast. Timer. Shiba Kong hesitated a bit. If she can, she doesn't want Shimo to go to the Spirit King's palace. Shimo stroked his soft black hair, raised the corners of his mouth, and said with a chuckle. It's okay. I will return. The Huahe cannon fired, and Tianjuchen quickly disappeared from sight. Gote 13 and others looked at the sky, and there was silence in the venue. Except for Kyōraku Shunsui, no one else had the idea of banning it. They are worried that this time separation may be permanent. Boom. Tianjuchu landed steadily on the ground. Ichibei Hayasabi was the first to go out and exclaimed. Here is the Spirit Palace. Shimo walked out of the Tianjuchu, and what he saw was the tall stone pillars on both sides, straight towards the clouds and snow. On the front of Lingwangang Street, it is Imadasanda. Passing through Imadasanda, above the high platform, Ling Family Temple is suspended in midair, and the center is Lingwang Danai. It is completely different from the architectural style of Yulingting, and it also shows the speciality of the Zero Team. It is detected that Su Shi has arrived at Lingon Palace. Thousands of tasks for the ultimate check-in have been completed. 1. Task rewards are being issued. Successfully issued task rewards. As the system's voice fell, Shimo was stunned. The head seemed to be hit by a heavy hammer suddenly, and the humming sound shook from the depths of my mind. Like the Big Bang, countless spiritual particles exploded in his body. One in the scabbard presented by the Kuchiki family, there was a soft cry. A weird emptiness-like power lingered around Shimo, and a little bright golden light appeared in his eyes. Like the long and endless galaxy that day, it reflects the darkness. This change naturally attracted the attention of the 5 members of the Zero Division. This Ryatsu, no, it has exceeded the power of Ryatsu Fan Brick. What the hell is this guy doing? The Death Tyrant, Captain Howery has undergone a change that the concubine can't understand. Guru, Zanpakutō is the same. His soul seems to be changing too. Real name, I can't see through, monk. Ichibei Hayasabi finally spoke, but it caught the attention of other members of the Zero Division. I saw that Ichibei Hayasabi's expression was very solemn. Shimo-kun has exceeded the dimension of Soul Society. The same members of the Zero Division, everyone knows the roots and knows the bottom of the existence. Perhaps Ichibei, the main ping-pong team, is more hidden, but everyone knows better about his achievements. Name everything in the Soul Society and know all the real names of Zanpakutō. Advertisement in Soul Society, the real name has irreplaceable meaning. At this time, Ichibei Hayasabi actually said that he could no longer see Shimo's real name. Does this mean that Shimo has truly surpassed Shinigami in this short period of time? No, it's not just Shinigami. It's the entire Soul Society, this world, Hueco Mundo. Shocked for a moment, Shimo closed his eyes and quietly realized his own changes. After a while, his eyes opened, and he had returned to his original appearance. Everyone, I have already made a decision. The purpose of the Zero Division is nothing more than to guard the Spirit King. 1. Shimo spread his hands, Feng Qingyun said plainly, and the best way to guard. It is to kill all dangers in the bud. As the voice fell, the faces of all 5 of them showed surprises. In their opinion, Shimo's remarks are really exaggerated. Although what happened to you just now, the changes we don't know. But is it too arrogant to kill all the dangers in the bud? So, I said to the promotion committee. Shimo's indifferent gaze swept over the 5 of them. I refuse. No surprise Ichibei Hayasabi's expression is a bit solemn. Invader. Kyōraku Shimo, your existence is the deepest hidden danger. Hearing this, Shimo smiled slightly and said softly. Do you understand? Unfortunately, it's too late. Transcendence in the true sense, I have done it the moment the voice fell. His body rose up with its imaginary terrifying power, covering the entire Spirit Palace in an instant. Different. The sound of breaking, uttered under the feet of the 5 people. A look of horror appeared on the face of Team Zero. The stagnation and heaviness around them, like mercury, makes them completely unable to understand the existence of this force. Ryatsu? No, this is definitely not the so-called Ryatsu. A new power that completely transcends the category of understanding. Shimo slowly stretched out his hand and pressed it in the air. Aizen has always pursued this power. He explained calmly. Unfortunately, Hogyoku is still the power of the Spirit King in essence. With the help of Hogyoku, Aizen can only reach the limit. Ichibei Hayasubi's eyes, the size of a copper bell, stared at Shimo. Do you want to say that you have surpassed the level of the Spirit King? Shimo smiled slightly and said, it seems that time has given you the most profound knowledge. The underlying meaning of this statement is already very clear. Goodbye you, maybe there is still a chance to meet. The empty handhall fell into the empty handhall and the space in front of Shimo was directly torn apart. The eroding darkness spread out from it. The shadow like the tentacles, constantly dancing in it. Advertisement, before I leave, I will help you solve this budding danger. Shimo glanced at the 5 people faintly and stepped straight into the darkness in front of him. The Invisible Empire. The huge white palace stands in the white wilderness, giving people a sense of emptiness. What a magnificent palace. Shimo sighed. Unfortunately, the owner's thoughts are too dangerous. At this moment, the supreme ruler of the Invisible Empire, the ancestor of the Quincy, Uhabak. The next moment, a figure appeared in front of Shimo. Crimson cloak dancing in the air, meeting for the first time, friend Habak. Shimo's mouth raised slightly. I'm sorry to tell you. Your recovery time is over. When he heard this, the person on the other side, Yohabak, had a gloomy expression on his face. Kyōraku Shimo, I know you exist, but what is supporting you to come into this invisible empire? Shimo stretched out his hand, his expression did not change at all, and said softly. It's the power that transcends everything, it takes a long time to solve. As soon as his words fell, Shimo's palm seemed to have an endless stream of galaxies. Between the engravings, this place is completely enveloped. The closed loop has sealed everything in the invisible empire in it. Goodbye, oh no, farewell. Shimo looked at the friend Habakar who was struggling in the long run, a faint smile appeared, and there was only peace in his voice. Everything in the invisible empire will be completely erased. The trembling sound echoed in Shimo's area. The next moment, as if it was erased by an eraser, everything was turned into nothingness. The invisible empire is completely weakened. Shimo let out a sigh of relief, muttering to himself, after all this is over, I can take a good rest for a while. In the next moment, his figure disappeared in place.